Morning and welcome everyone to the 8th Annual Music Business Forum. My name is AJ Merlino and I'm the Director of Music Industry Studies and an Associate Dean at Albright College. I'll be your host and moderator for this amazing event that features presentations from some of the entertainment industry's top executives who all just happen to be Albright College graduates. Before we get started, I'd like to thank all those who make this event possible every single year. That includes Albright College President Jackie Fetro, our Provost Karen Campbell, Center for the Arts Director David Tanner, Center for the Arts Administrative Assistant Christy Klein, Music Department Chair Jeff Lentz, and the entirety of the Music Department. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Trent Gray. Trent is the Box Office and Client Services Manager at ASM Richmond. He has enjoyed a 4-year tenure with ASM Global and recently celebrated his 1-year anniversary at the historic Altria Theater in Richmond, Virginia. Trent is a graduate of Albright College class of 2017 with a degree in Music Industry Studies and Arts Administration. He has worked on numerous performances with acts including Kevin Hart, Slayer, Mark Anthony, Tim Allen, Hozier, Sebastian Maniscalco, and Hamilton. In July of 2019, Trent was named a member of the 30 Under 30 class of 2019 by the International Association of Venue Managers. Please help me welcome Trent Gray.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, AJ, for that incredible introduction. I'm very excited to be here. I was really excited, especially working on the forum in the past, to have the opportunity to present. I am a little heartbroken it's not in person, but I am extremely grateful for the opportunity and extremely excited to be here with you guys. So without further ado, I'm going to start sharing my presentation here for you. All right, so let's see a show. With me again, I'm Trent Gray, the Box Office and Client Services Manager of ASM Global. So let's meet Albright's golden child, the one that got away, according to AJ Merlino. This is an exact quote I took from the New York Times. Well, my time at Albright, I was involved in Line Enterprises in a couple different capacities. My favorite being the president of Line Enterprises. In one of my favorite things was actually running the forum when we had it during my time. I was also heavily involved in WXAC as the music director there. I would highly recommend, if anyone here has not already reached out to Mindy at WXAC, to get involved. My experience in time there, I really truly feel is one of the building blocks for my career, and what I've been able to achieve so far is having Mindy there and having that experience at WXAC. She's been a great mentor to me, and I would really suggest everybody to kind of head over to WXAC and get the same experience I did. I also was a part of SGA during my time, which was an amazing thing, especially helped during with budgeting and finding out different allocation of resources, which really helped as I move forward. And I had a couple different internships, one at WXAC, and then one with SMG, which is now ASM Global, which actually led into my career here. So I couldn't be more thankful for that. My real world experience at SMG at the Santander Arena and Santander Performing Arts Center right there in Reading, Pennsylvania. I started out as an administrative assistant after my internship and then turned into the box office supervisor, which is one of the part-time roles that is a part of a box office. And then I took the role of assistant box office manager, and I had that for about 2 years before I found out about an opportunity in Richmond, Virginia. So I then moved to SMG Richmond, and during my time at SMG Richmond is when the transition into ASM Global happened. There I was the box office manager, and then in November I moved into the box office and client services manager title. I was named one of the 30 under 30 in the class of 2019 by IAVM, which is the International Association of Venue Managers. And recently I was just awarded with the title of Best Cat Dad, which is my crowning achievement so far by my beautiful little cat, Dave. So ASM Global, imagine the experience. That is the company I work for. It is a management company. So it's a company that manages venues. So what is a management company and how does that work? So the the venue is owned by some sort of client or some sort of board. In a basic sense, it's some form of entity. In a lot of cases, it is a government entity or it's run by the local government, but those staff don't really know how to manage a building. So that's where companies like ours, ASM Global, comes in to provide high-level professionals who can manage a building to make it a center for tourism, to bring entertainment to the local area, and of course to make the endeavor profitable. So there is the first scenario here. We have the board and the client, and they contract the management company to then run the building. There is also another form this can take where it is a management company who actually owns stake in the building as well and then runs it too. There's a couple other different ways. If there is no management company involved, say it's a private interest that owns the building itself and they run it with their staff. These are the two main ways that a management company is actually involved. So SMG to ASM Global. I hope it is something you guys have saw. It was one of the biggest mergers in the industry. It's where formerly we were at SMG and we merged with AEG facilities to now form ASM Global. So it is the world's leading venue management and service company, and we focus on connecting people through the power of live experiences and events. There's just some quick stats here. So there's 160 million guests hosted annually through ASM Global events. We're on 5 different continents. There's 61,000 staff members of ASM Global spread out amongst the world. There is 23 million square feet of convention space because we do manage theaters, convention areas, stadiums, arenas, amphitheaters, everything really. 2.7 million seats under our management as ASM Global. And then there are 300 plus venues that's in our portfolio, and that is worldwide. So let's talk a little bit about the Santander Arena and the Santander Performing Arts Center, which is the one that's right in your backyard. You guys are very fortunate to have a wonderful venue there in a great market in Reading, Pennsylvania. So the first one here on top is the Santander Arena. This is a beautiful shot. I love this. This was taken during my time there. It is an amazing venue. It's 7,000 plus capacity venue. So there's a bunch of different configurations it can have. There's a bunch of different ways that the place can be set up, but it's a beautiful place to go. And there's also the Santander Performing Arts Center, which is about a 1,700 plus capacity. So you have a great 7,000 plus seat venue there, as well as a theater. There also is the Reading Royals, which I'm sure you guys are aware of, and a lot of other really cool stuff that come in when you have a big building like that. So moving on to ASM Richmond, where I currently am. This is the Altria Theater. It's a historic Altria Theater in Richmond, Virginia. It is the capacity is 3,600, so it's about 3,600 seats. And you can see the inside here. It's a beautiful 3-tiered theater. It was originally a mosque. A lot of people used to know it as the mosque. And that's a thing I've had to get used to here in Richmond, people calling it the mosque. Oh yeah, I work at the Altria Theater, the mosque. It's a gorgeous space. When I saw it, first time I saw it in person, I was blown away by it. It's a great house. We see a lot of business here. Our Broadway series is really successful and one of our driving forces. We also run another building here, much like in Reading, where you have the Santander Arena and Santander Performing Arts Center. We also run the Dominion Energy Center in ASM Richmond. So Dominion Energy Center is about half the size. It's a 1,800 capacity theater, and it is as well gorgeous. This is the outside of it, and you can see the inside. This is during a symphonic performance. But the really cool thing about this venue is you can see that there's like kind of these clouds and stars up in the sky. It has a lot of really cool character, and a lot of our guests here love to come and actually see shows at the Dominion Energy Center because of the cool character that it has. All right, so let's get inside the live event. I wanted to kind of just do a full overview of live events and how live events work before getting into my job and what ticketing is, because I do think it is kind of valuable just to understand how a live event functions. So Here are some terms that I have. I gave this presentation to someone who doesn't have much experience in the industry, and these are things that they wanted me to explain in the beginning. So you guys may know some of these, but I just kind of wanted to touch on them really quickly. Also, I will use some more lingo that I may have forgot to put on here. If you have any questions about what I'm saying or what it means, please just point it out right away, and I can explain to you what that term is. So promoter is a company or person who is at risk for the performance. Sometimes I'll use house in place of the venue. Build is the process of creating a show in the ticketing system. Holds are seats that are held for specific purposes during the build process. A cap is the capacity of the venue. Like I've told you, the capacity of the Santander Performing Arts Center Arena and the Altria Theater and the Nvidia Energy Center. Gross is the total amount of money that comes in, and net is that amount of money less your expenses. And then risk is at stake. So if you're at risk, you have the opportunity to lose as well as gain, but that's just basic of what risk means. So I wanted to go over deals first, just a quick preview of booking. And I did have a quick disclaimer on this. I'm going to show you the 3 main deals that everything is kind of based around. No deal is the same. I have seen some come in that are straight like this, but there's usually a lot of exceptions and a lot of tweaks made here and there by the booking department. But these are the 3 fundamental deals that are kind of everything is based on as you move through when you're booking an event. This is also the BOK Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's a beautiful arena. If you guys are ever in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I could not recommend more grabbing a ticket to a show and checking out what's going on there. So the first main deal is a rental. So a rental, it's a straight deal where you have the promoter. So the promoter, again, is the person who's presenting the show and is at risk. In my job, promoter is king, and this kind of really details it out. So you have the promoter at the top. They will actually have an outside deal with the talent or management or agent or whoever is directly representing the artist or talent. They will have an outside deal with them that usually us as a venue, we don't know about. They will then book a date and space in the venue, and then we receive rent for that. Then we, as the venue, facilitate a lot moving forward from there. And ticketing is actually a positive income revenue. So that's where we get the whole revenue for the event. So we collect the ticketing revenue. We then also have some expenses that go along with the show. And that's just standard for everything. I mean, the security, marketing, there's some pretty basic expenses that come up when you're actually presenting a performance. So then we will then remit those funds back to the promoter, less the expenses. So, and the deal snapshot at the bottom, I have your event income, your talent cost, and your venue rent and expenses, and then your promoter take. And everybody wants this to be as big as possible. So you want to be able to pay your artists, pay all your expenses, and then the show nets way more above that. And that's where the promoter's take comes in. So that's a straight rental. There's also another option, which is a co-pro or a co-promotion. This is where the venue is also going to be taking some risk as well. So we become a partner with the presenting promoter. So in this one, you have the promoter who reaches out and books with the agent and the talent. So that's a known deal that we know about. We then collect the ticketing revenue. There's still the same expenses that occur during the show. And then the big difference here is we're able to split that with the promoter and the venue. So we have actually an opportunity to, we're at risk with it. So we are also at gain whenever we're able to get part of the net profits from that. So again, with the quick deal snapshot, you have the event income minus the talent cost, minus the venue rent and expenses. And then you have the profit to split between the promoter and the venue. So for the third kind of basic deal that you have in booking is going to be when it's a presenting house, when the house is presenting or it's being self-promoted by the house. So this is where we don't have a promoter who is at risk and we are fully at risk for that show. So you have the venue where we buy the talent directly, whether it be through the buy, the agent, the management, however that may work. We buy it with an internal deal that we know about. And then we collect the ticketing revenue. And then again, same expenses, because the expenses are usually hard costs. So they're the same expenses that you'd have if you put on a show when a promoter is presenting the show itself. So in this situation, again, it's exactly kind of like a rental where you're just getting rid of the promoter and we're the ones who are fully at risk. So your deal snapshot, you have your event income minus your talent cost, minus your expenses, and then that's the profit that the venue gets to take. So I do see some questions coming in here, so I'm just going to answer those quickly. So for the rental deal with the promoter, you as the venue only make revenue off the rental fees, and the promoter pays you rent out of the revenue, correct? Yes. So we do not make any of the let's say profit off the event, if that makes sense. So the promoter is the one who's going to get the actual income from it. They're renting out the space. So we get the rental fee, and then we upfront pay the expenses, and they kind of pay us back when we remit the profits to them, if that makes sense. I do see one more question I'll grab real quick. Based on your experience, what would you say is the most stressful part of your profession, and what are the actions you take to overcome the stresses within your profession? So in ticketing in general, we'll get into this a little bit more later. A lot of stress is on you, especially being in the box office. It's hard because you're the touch point. You're the touch point between the clients that you deal with as promoters and also the general public that's buying tickets. If there's a lot of times when a show goes on sale and I'm right there at 10 a.m. refreshing, checking, making sure everything works, because it's me. It's fully me. I'm the one who controls when it goes up, what it looks like, and how it works in the ticketing system. So that is a little bit stressful. I'm a complete preparer. I prepare, I triple check everything, and that's kind of the way that I deal with that. Those are the most stressful times for me, is during on sales or when something goes up, to make sure it's as we agreed upon with the presenter. So that's just how I deal with it. I just kind of get really focused in and checking through everything, and you have to be very thorough in this kind of position. So that's how I deal with that. Okay, so let's look at the types of houses. So there are presenting houses and there are non-presenting houses. So most houses and most venues are going to be non-presenting houses. So that's where a lot of people are going to take those rental deals. Currently, I am in a non-presenting house. So a lot of the time it is the promoters who are at risk and the promoters who are calling shots. Again, the promoter is king. That's one thing I hope you guys remember, promoter is king. In a presenting house, they are able to take risks. And those are kind of dictated out by the board and the founding interest that's our clients that we report to as the management company. So I did want to show, I'm just throwing in some really cool shots of some of our ASM Global's venues. So this is the Colorado Convention Center in Denver, Colorado. This is really famous for that blue bear that you see that's looking into the windows. I got to visit this building and I loved it. It was such a cool view and all those open glass. It was amazing. During my time in Reading, we would take risk occasionally. So I did have that experience under my belt as well. So let's talk about promoters. So here are some of the logos from some of there's seems to be an endless string of promoters that we work with. But here's ones that we work with a lot. You can't talk about promoters without talking about Live Nation. They definitely are one of the biggest around. They run a lot of big national tours. I work with them a lot currently. Outback Concerts is great. AEG Presents is the promoter arm of AEG Facilities, which we merge with. SLP Concerts, they're based out of New Jersey. Stan Levitznow's a great guy. Frank Productions, Round Room, NS2, they have been really great to us. We work with NS2 a lot. And then Nederlander National Markets. They also were another huge merger that came. It was Cham Theatricals and Nederlander that became Nederlander National Markets. So that is a promoter that we work very closely with because they present our Broadway series. Another question here, what would you make a venue be a presenting house versus a non-presenting house, and why would they choose one or the other? So it is up to the board or the interest that we're serving as our clients that we're serving. They can choose whether they want to be at risk or not. So when you're at risk, you have the opportunity to lose money as well as make. So that's when your revenue coming in from ticketing is a lot lower than what your talent costs and your expenses are. So it's mainly of, is there a possibility that you can lose some money being the venue and the promoter? It is the risk that you run, but you also open yourself up to the opportunity to gain. So risk and reward. Being a non-presenting house means you're kind of always going to be on the plus side of things because you're just getting rent. You're an expense to the promoter. The promoter has to then make up the profit in ticketing. So we don't worry about that as much. Now, again, we do try to take care of our promoters as much as we can and help them out. And if a show is not, selling well or it's not selling where they would like, we jump in and try to help out as much as possible. There are a couple different types of clients. So promoted events are you're going to have where you have that promoter. So those are the promoters that we've talked about before. There are also resident companies. Resident companies are extremely important to the work that we do. And these are companies that are going to be in the building a lot. A really good example is going to be a symphony. So a Reading Symphony or a Richmond Symphony. There's other ones that can be determined that there's operas, different kind of plays that come through if it's a local organization that is presenting different musicals or things like that, and they're in your building a lot, they could be considered resident companies. So they're ones that are there all the time that you work with. Then you also have what's called a tenant. So a tenant, a really good example of this is going to be in your backyard in Reading, Pennsylvania, is the Reading Royals. So the Reading Royals is a tenant to the building. There's someone who's in the building, they're working in the building, and they're there a lot. They take up a huge amount of the calendar because there's a giant piece of ice in the middle of the arena and they skate on it and play hockey. So that's someone you can have as a tenant. It also includes like NFL teams. Sports teams are a really good example of someone who is there, you're going to be committing a good amount of your calendar to. This is the Bridgewater Hall in Manchester, United Kingdom. So I'm going to move on to who works at a venue and what are kind of the departments that venue encompasses. So there's the administration, booking, food and beverage, production, operations, ticketing, also known as box office. You'll hear people just call it box office, and marketing. Oh, sorry about that. So administration is going to include things like the general manager, the assistant general manager, HR, administrative tasks and duties. Booking is going to be your booking managers, directors, coordinators. Food and beverage is going to be concessions, catering, things of that nature. Productions is going to be more of the live event aspect, so sound, lighting, stage, anything of that nature. Operations is more of the operations of the venue. So those are the people that will go in and fix seats, the janitorial staff, ticketing staff, or the ticket taker staff, the ushers, stuff of that nature. Ticketing includes myself in the box office, and then marketing is going to be our staff that runs social media, helps out with marketing plans with promoters, anything that may be needed with that. All right, so workflow. So I wanted to show from the beginning when an event gets booked, what happens from start to finish. So, and I also threw in what departments are working on that, so you guys can kind of have a good grasp of what departments or who's in the pot at whatever time. So the show's being booked, so the booking department's mainly going to handle that. They're going to be working with all those agents and promoters to try to get shows into the building. They're also going to be working pretty closely with marketing and box office, so that way we can make sure if they're going to ask for a scaling, which is pretty much a breakdown of how the pricing looks for the event. I do a lot of scalings when a promoter will reach out and say, hey, I'm thinking of bringing this artist. What do you think it would look like at these prices, or what's the gross going to be? And I'll build out what the prices look, where the breaks are for them so they can see it. Marketing is going to be in touch with, we have these radio stations on hand, we have these opportunities for you, there's this plan that we can make. And then production, of course, is going to be interested in, how does the show get brought into the venue? Is it even possible? There are some times where a show is just too big. Now, we're very fortunate. We have a very large stage in both of our buildings in Richmond, but there are some spaces that they want this show really bad, but your stage isn't tall enough because there's some kind of mechanical piece that needs to come in or something of that nature. Once the show is booked, it kind of gets handed off to marketing and box office. And that's where the show is going to go into its pre-sale and on sales. So that's where I'll be working on the build. I'll be working directly with the promoter, the management, whoever the parties that have interest in it. I'll be working with them directly to make sure everything is set. And then it goes into on sale. This also includes our marketing announcements and marketing plans. And then once the show is on sale, it's kind of just in that on sale period. That's the period from when it announced, when you're first able to buy tickets, up until when the show is actually being performed. So there's a good amount of maintenance that I need to do, which is just checking inventory, managing the event in general. I'll get more into that later. So next we have the show. The show needs to be advanced. So advancing a show is basically nailing down all the nitty-gritty final details. So that is mainly our production is going to be involved in that. And then again, they touch base with food and beverage, finance, and box office to make sure that if anything is needed, it is taken care of. And this is where we have meetings where we go over just the whole event. So we have a sheet that lays out what time the band's coming in, what time security is getting there, what time ticket takers are coming through, what the stage is going to look like, what time is intermission, what time these acts are going on, how the entire event works. They will nail it down bit by bit, even to the point of what time someone enters the building and when they leave. And then after that, you're going to have the event load in. So with the event load in, that's actually where the show comes in. So that's when you see outside of our venues where we have 15 tractor trailers loading in a Broadway show. So they come in, that's going to be mainly handled by production, finance, food and beverage, again, to provide catering and other things that they may need. And then box office too. There's other things I need to provide for them the day of or load in, or I usually will meet with every tour as soon as they come in. We'll do what we call walking the house, where we'll walk the house and actually see everything. They get to see it in person. We could talk about if there's maybe some issues or things that need to be handled. I do see a question that just came in about COVID-19. I will answer that. I just want to wait till the end to bring that up because it is kind of a large can of worms. So next after loading, you have the actual performance. So when the performance is happening, you're going to have the production is going to be mainly taken over because the show is on stage. Box office, because we're there to serve the customers and make sure everyone's seated in, all the tickets are scanned, anything of that nature. And food and beverage, because you need to grab a beverage and maybe some snacks before you go into the show. After the performance, there's the loadout and settlement period. So loadout is just production. It's doing everything in reverse. They back the trucks up and everything goes back into the truck and they move on to the next performance. Settlement is another process that's mainly handled between finance and box office. That's a large part of my job. So that is where we sit down with either the talent themselves or the promoter or the agents, whoever it is that's there as the vested interest. And we will go over everything, dollars and cents, all the expenses. I provide a nice little packet of backup. Here's our contract. Go through everything so we can agree, sign a piece of paper. Here's your checks. It's a great day. We look forward to seeing you next time. So let's get into ticketing next. So now we have a large overview of the event. And there is a lot of generalities, a lot of things are left out of there, but that's a basic idea of kind of how it moves forward. So ticketing is more than just getting a butt in the seat. I do personally, before I stepped into ticketing, I was unaware of how complex it was. And ticketing is something that is a very, you have to be a ticketing person to know it. So it is a skill that's learned as you're in the industry. There's a lot of people who look at us ticketing people when they say something, marketing's brainstorming an idea, and I'm like, we got to do this in the system. We got to make it this way, or, can you just word it this way so it's a little different? It's a lot of just technical. There's a lot of times where I just get a call and this is what we're thinking. Is it possible? And I'm like, I'm not sure, but I will find a way to make it possible in the system. So let's do a quick overview of the department. So the ticketing department is going to generally include the box office, which is going to be one of the, I guess, most forward-facing ways to see the ticketing in general. So that's where we're going to deal with customers. We're going to deal with day-to-day sales, and we're going to deal with building the events. Also encompassed under that is group sales. We're fortunate enough to have a group sales department. Most buildings do have a group sales department. It may be separate of ticketing. Ours is actually lumped under it. It is a department that I directly oversee. And then subscriptions as well. We are a very big Broadway house. We have very successful Broadway seasons, and subscriptions are a large part of that to have a subscriber base. And I oversee subscriptions for ASM Richmond as well. So I'm just seeing some questions come in here. How do you manage all the duties you have to do the day of an event? Well, I have a full staff as well. So there's a lot of times I need to be out of the box office. My office is directly in the box office. So when an event's coming up, I have my staff who's taking care of it. I have some supervisors in there that have a little higher level clearance, or will radio me, call me on my cell phone, be like, hey, this is a situation pops up. I tell them what to do as I'm meeting with the tour and taking care of anything that they may need. So it is kind of, like I said, promoter's king. Once the show's in the building, the show's in the building, and they call my phone, I answer. And I help them with anything that they may need. So it is kind of just, I have some other staff that can help out with more of the basic, a customer's just walking up and they left their tickets at home and they need them reprinted manner, while I'm dealing with, here's what we're looking at in the house. What POS system do you use for the box office? Is it proprietary? Does it link to food and beverage and merchandising? So I'm going to get into our ticketing system soon. So we do have a ticketing system. Most ticketing systems are separate. I wouldn't say it's proprietary, because it is throughout the entire industry. And it does not link to food and beverage or merchandising. They're on their own system. There are a couple systems that will link up to it. Ours do not. It's easier to keep that separate, if that makes sense. Because when I settle with a tour, we're talking about ticketing money. We're not talking about what came in for beer sales. Don't know if I'm allowed to talk about beer on here, but that is a big part of our job for the beverage. So we do keep that separate. There are some deals that we bring that in, but we just keep it separate as separate reports. Since I'm not directly overseeing it, I can't speak to how the merchandise went. I can speak to how the ticket sales went. And then there will be the merchandise representative that's there that usually already spoke to who is settling the show in finance. And then they have those questions answered as well. Okay. So I wanted to give a quick overview of my department. Now this is different between different venues. So just to give you an idea of how it works for me in ASM Richmond. So when I became the client service manager, this definitely looked a lot different. Or this definitely was different before then when I first joined as just the box office manager. But we were able to bring in a lot of worlds and oversee a lot more now that I have that client services title. So for me as the box office manager, I mainly oversee the Altria Theater. And that includes our Broadway, is mainly at the Altria Theater. There's a separate box office manager for the Dominion Energy Center, which we call DEC. And he manages the Dominion Energy Center. We do have an assistant box office manager, and these are full-time roles. The assistant box office manager manages both buildings. So they're an assistant to the Dominion Energy Center and the Altria Theater. And the box office managers will co-manage that person, so we both oversee them. So I oversee the Altria Theater box office as the box office client services manager. I also see the subscriptions and group sales office. We do have a full-time group sales coordinator who I oversee as well in that position, and then the part-time group sales staff. And then there is the Altria Theater. We have a full-time box office coordinator. And then there's also the part-time ticketing staff. So this is just a quick view of how it is broken up in my department, just so you could see it in kind of person, in a real life scenario of how it works out. There's other theaters that they work differently. They have different organization structures, but I did just want to give kind of ours. So let's talk about the build. So the build is a huge part of my job. So the build is the ticketing letter. So the ticketing letter is kind of my contract when it comes to ticketing services. It's addition to the contract. And a lot of what's on the contract is mirrored in that build. It's my kind of just document I focus on. It's my Bible. We have a promoter who calls theirs the Bible because that's the importance of it. That details out everything ticketing wise. And it also details out a lot of finance wise, how the different revenue splits go, how everything looks to the customers. It's a very important document. Included in there is going to be things like holds. So you guys may have seen that used before. Holds are seats that are held back from sale for a very specific reason. So the biggest example I have of that is marketing. So when we build a show, we know that we're going to give 10 tickets to this radio station. They're going to give them away to help promote the show. So those seats are held. And there's a couple different ways we do that. I can either just pull them and give them those seats, or they'll send me a list of, these 5 people want 2 seats each, and I'll have them waiting at will call for them. So that is the biggest kind of example of what a hold is. Pricing is huge because, again, that lists out the gross of how the show is going to work financially. On sale schedule is really important. What seats are going on sale when, and to who. And what I mean by to who, I mean there's pre-sales. There's a lot of artists, as you guys know from buying tickets to shows, there's artists who do have pre-sales, whether that be through Spotify, whether it be through their Facebook group, email list. They want to make sure their fans get in first and get some great seats. So they use that for pre-sales, and then the on sale for the general public. Any other offers they may be throwing in there. There's a lot of PBS offers that come through, shows that work with PBS to help them raise money locally, or anything like, if there's some kind of, I know Ticketmaster is a popular program called Me+3. So there's other like different ticketing offers that come through there, or if they want to say, okay, students get half price tickets. So if you have a student ID, you get a half price ticket. Those kind of things will be included in there as well. And then there's also going to be contacts. These are generally people that I'll be working with and talking to make sure they have everything they need from me. And by me, I mean the venue as well. And then counts. Counts are really important. There's another report we'll talk about in a little bit that has just kind of how everything's laid out. So counts, they just want to know how many people bought, what price did they buy at, what's my money right now. That's what they're looking for. And usually they want that on a daily basis. So there's an automated way in the system that I can send them a report that shows them that. So I have a bunch of questions. I love that you guys are asking questions. You're getting ahead of me in my presentation here. So I do see one about scalping tickets. I'm going to get to that shortly. And my favorite part of the job, honestly, is just seeing the crowd come in. I love when I could see them leave and they're talking about how excited they were and how great of a time it was. I do think it's hard a lot of times being in a customer service position with the general public that comes in. We do kind of tend to focus on the negative or the complaints we get. But there's also, thousands of people that leave that are so stoked, they're so excited, and they want to come back to our theater, and they love coming to our theater because we bring great shows, and we're right here in Richmond with them. So that's kind of my favorite thing, is just to see how excited they get. It's really cool too for children's shows. Kids come dressed up like the characters, which is the coolest thing in the world. So it's just really excited to see people get to experience something they can only experience in our building, which is amazing. So moving forward here, so maintaining the show. So the building is in a unique experience. In my position's in a unique experience as well. Oh, real quick, I forgot to mention, I've been missing out on mentioning the buildings here. So this is the Coca-Cola Arena, and that's in Dubai. That's one of the ones in our portfolio as well. And then here we have the Hawaii Convention Center in Honolulu, Hawaii. I have not visited that one. I would love to, because I've heard amazing things about it. But maintaining an event. So there's a lot of things I do to maintain it, because we're in a unique position where I have to service the show and the promoter and service the building, but I also have to take care of the market here. So that's the unique position we're in, where we have the market that we need to take care of, and that's the customers, the client base. If somebody calls in and there's accident in the family, they need some kind of assistance or something, we're there for them. There's a lot of times where, to throw an example, I'm not going to use the name of the show, but there was a show where there was a very small amount of VIP tickets. And they particularly wanted the VIP to be in the front row. It was called a part of the front row package. And there was a customer who needed ADA accommodations, and the seats just were not in a place where those ADA accommodations could be handled appropriately. So I had reached out to the tour and said, hey, I have this customer. There's 2 of them. I know we're only allowed to sell the 6 of those front row VIPs. Would you mind if we move that up to 8, so I can sell them to the VIPs in a section where they're able to sit and enjoy the show? Most shows, I mean, that show was like, yes, of course, thank you for reaching out to us. Most shows will 100% say yes to that. I can't think of a show that wouldn't. And those are the kind of things you need to do to take care of the client base. But also, like I keep saying, promoter is king. So there's other things that need to service the show and make sure the show is still happy. So if a customer calls in, they want a refund or something, we're not able to make that call because it's not our show. We're not at risk for it. So I do need to get approval from a promoter. Am I able to release these tickets? Am I able to give them a refund? Yes or no? And those can kind of go either way. So I'm just going to hop in real quick to answer a couple more questions. I see one. Has there ever been a scenario where an event has been double booked without anyone realizing it? No, we have a lot of safeguards in place to prevent that. We have a whole system, and that's something that could be dived more deeply into with the booking aspect of it. But there's a thing called holds on the booking side. A first hold, second hold. There's different things. So it's kind of, you get first shot at that date. So if you confirm you're the first one there, you got it. So there's a lot of internal checks we have to make sure shows aren't double booked, if that makes sense. With the merger with SMG and ASM, were there any changes with your position, and how was the adjustment? Actually not. The ASM has been incredible to me throughout my entire career. I'm very thankful for ASM. And it was great because they saw the opportunity for these great two companies to merge. And honestly, the only thing that has changed since then has been some smaller internal policies, and also just that we expanded and got more buildings, they got more buildings. So it was a win-win for everybody. And there's been nothing real change to my process or anything of that nature. So let's move forward here. So now we're at settlement. And I have reports, baby, because that is my job. Reports. So an audit is one of the biggest reports you'll hear anybody in ticketing talk about. Audits are huge. Audits are kind of what I live by. And that's that report that kind of details out, what tickets were sold, when, how it was kind of set up, what are the price levels. So that's one that's really important to shows. So you'll hear audit thrown around a lot in ticketing and live events. The counts are audit reports. That's what they get. Method of payment is huge too. There's a lot of times where you need to know how people bought tickets. Let's say for credit card service fees. You know how many people bought credit cards because the credit card company gets a fee. And that's for any retail organization that uses credit cards. That you have to pay some service fees for that. There's also all kinds of different ones. There's literally a never-ending list. When I worked with Ticketmaster and Reading, you had to have a lot of them memorized. With eTix, there's a lot of different options, which is what I use now in Richmond, Pennsylvania, or Richmond, Virginia, sorry. So there's endless amounts of reports. There's reports to kind of get you to do anything you want to do. There's a lot of times I get a call, and it's just some real obscure question, and it's like, can you find this out? Like, give me about 20 minutes, and I'm pulling all kinds of reports and merging Excel sheets and all kinds of things to get whatever information they need, because the shows just want information out of you. So this is the Peoria Civic Center in Peoria, Illinois. That's a beautiful venue. I've not been there either, but that's just one that I wanted to pick out and show you guys. Next, and this is one of those questions that was brought up earlier, was the ticketing POS system. So there's a lot of ticketing companies out there. Here are the really big ones. And the biggest one definitely would have to be Ticketmaster. I'm not gonna say it's an industry standard, but most buildings have Ticketmaster as a ticketing system. When I was in Reading, we used Ticketmaster. I had experience with Ticketmaster and building shows in Ticketmaster. Here in Richmond, Virginia, we are very fortunate to work with eTix. eTix is a great company that we use here. There's also Teslatora, which is going to be mainly for like nonprofit use. I shouldn't say mainly for nonprofit use, but there's a CRM, which is a client relationship management built into it. So it's great for nonprofits. It's really popular in those systems. And Eventbrite is a really big one. They just absorbed, I think it was Ticketfly. They absorbed from them, so they became Eventbrite. So these are kind of the big guys in the industry. And again, I have had experience with Ticketmaster and eTix. So I see some more questions. I'll get to these in a second. I promise you guys. You are still trying to get a little bit ahead of me here. This was one of the questions I was asked earlier about scalping. There are resellers, and these are ticket companies that resell tickets that were already bought. So the big thing about this is to know primary versus secondary ticketing. So a primary ticket servicer is Ticketmaster, eTix, any of those companies that originate with the venue. So I directly am the primary ticket seller because we sell the tickets. The only way you can get a valid ticket in Richmond, Virginia is through eTix. Now, these resellers will be on the secondary market. So they are selling these tickets after they've already been sold through the primary ticket seller. So StubHub is definitely the biggest one in the game for resale tickets right now. And then there's SeatGeek and Vivid Seats are really big as well. So what these people do, again, some of you may have purchased from them, they allow me as a consumer to buy a ticket from someone else. So it's a secondhand transaction that is separate of the original purchase place, the primary ticketing and the venue. So that does create some challenges, and that does create some issues to the venue. So one of the big issues is a pricing issue. I mean, it is scalping. It's modern in scalping. There's a lot of people who will buy a front row seat to whatever a big ticket item is, and then they'll try to sell it for 4 or 5 times what it's worth. It is really hard because there are people out there who do not understand the difference, and they will just search for an event or search on Google for a theater or a venue, and they'll be one of the first hits they get is for a StubHub, and they don't realize they're buying it secondhand. And that causes a lot of issues because if we have a customer who wants to buy, let's say a Jonas Brothers concert, and they go and they search Jonas Brothers, Richmond, Virginia, or whatever venue or market they're in, and they see tickets are $1,000. They're like, wow, the Jonas Brothers is way more expensive than I thought. I can't afford to go. But really, tickets weren't $1,000. They bought those tickets for, you know, $80 up in the top of the balcony. So it kind of helps. It hurts our perception of tickets and the perception of the artist because these people are just trying to make the highest margin off of those tickets that they can after they buy them. It also creates an ownership issue, which is a weird thing to think about unless you are involved in the industry here. So an ownership issue comes into play when, let's say myself, Trent Gray, I buy a ticket and then I go on StubHub, which I would never do, just a quick disclaimer, never do that, and resell a ticket to somebody else. And AJ Merlino buys that ticket. When AJ Merlino shows up to the venue and he's like, oh, I don't have my ticket. Here's my order number. Can you print it for me? Well, you don't have a ticket. Your name's not in our ticket system. Well, yeah, I did. I bought a ticket right here. Well, oh, that's from StubHub. You're a customer of StubHub. It's hard because you're not a customer of the venue or a customer of us. And a lot of people have a hard time understanding that. And especially in those situations, you spent 5 times what the ticket was worth. You're being turned away at the gate because you don't have a ticket. Or, hey, I was told the tickets would be emailed to me and they never did. They're not there. There's also been some issues where if a customer comes in and there's someone in their seats, well, it's because those people actually own the seats and then they sold them to you and got their money's worth. And unfortunately, legally, they are still the owner of those seats. They're the ones that get to experience it. And you kind of have to take it up with StubHub, which is a really hard thing customer service wise. And that's one of the things I'm seeing with the unexpected challenges. That's one of the really hard challenges that pops up is to have someone, you know, my heart breaks when someone's in my lobby and I'm out talking to them. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but your tickets aren't real. And that's another thing with the fraudulent tickets. And it's, you can laugh at it at the time, but it's hard when you really think about it. Because when someone walks up to a show and they try to scan a ticket and it doesn't scan, and they're like, oh, hey, get Trent involved. And I walk out there and the name on the ticket says Daffy Duck. It's hard. And you think, how could people get by that? But it does happen more than you would think, for people just selling tickets because they know it's a hot item and they know people want to buy them and they can get them on StubHub and it's, you know, or I don't want to single out StubHub or other secondary markets where they can do that since it's not checked through the venue. It's not venue approved. It's not venue verified. There's no way to know those seats are verified or real. A lot of the verified claims are going to be to get your money back, if that makes sense. So not your seat will work. We'll give you a refund from those providers, which is a hard situation. And, not the same when you just, told your son you're going to see Hamilton today with me. It's a hard situation to be in. And I hope one hard thing, and I will just give a quick shout out, is please use your primary ticketing providers. Call the venues if you're unsure if it's a primary ticket provider, because you will get the assurance from them. Like there's been people that have called them like, I'm seeing these tickets on, citytickets.com. It's like, no, go to eTix. That's where you need to be. And I feel so good for helping them out and getting them out of that kind of weird situation. Because you do kind of run a risk when you buy from a secondhand site. So hopefully that's answered some of the questions that come in about challenges and different things of that nature. So let's look at that's some of the other outcomes of secondary markets versus primary markets, is finding the true value of a seat, as weird as that sounds. That is kind of some discussions that are happening in the ticketing world of, okay, we're selling this ticket for, $120. And they're selling like hotcakes on a resale site for $350. That ticket may actually be worth $350, but it's a balancing act. So you got to watch, because the scalpers are always trying to make more money than what they paid. So if you give into that too much, and you're like, okay, let's raise our ticket price $50, you're going to see the ticket price go up $50 on the resale site. So it is a kind of a metric to look at, but not take as seriously as possible, just to see what it is. And there have been some tourism companies, they do really religiously check resale sites to kind of find the value of the ticket, because as in a booking perspective, you are trying to find the value of a ticket. You're trying to find what a customer will pay to have that great seat in the front of the arena. It is also an alternative to refunds. Some people do just go there instead of getting a refund. Take that as you will. But there are some companies, Ticketmaster comes to mind, who do run their own resale alongside of their primary ticketing. In that situation, it is really safe to buy it. I would take context into that situation, because we do have people who buy resale tickets off Ticketmaster, come to our venue, which is eTix, and they're not as safe because it's a totally different system. So that is a different alternative that could come from a secondary market. It also is a large industry, which is why you're seeing some companies like Ticketmaster dip their toes into it to make sure, to try to get that missed revenue as well. And this is the Mercedes-Benz Superdome in New Orleans, which is a really cool venue. So I want to get into the bigger picture here. So just kind of the bigger picture of what a venue is and where it's going to be and its role in the industry. So again, the venue has such a unique position because we're the front-facing aspect of the show. The majority of the public don't really understand what a promoter is, or understand that there is a promoter involved or another interest that's there that's actually putting on the show. There's a lot of times that somebody will call me and ask me a question or ask for an accommodation of some sort. I'm like, okay, well, I didn't check the show. Oh, but you are the show. Like, you're the one putting it on. They rent the space from us. That's how it works. We got to go back to them for their input and their decision on this. So we're in a unique position. There's also some times where that, if a show cancels, it's negative on the venue. It's not negative on the artist or anything of that. Not saying it should be, but we have a unique position where we need to deal with the community that's buying tickets in our market. We need to protect our market to make sure they're not getting price gouged, to make sure they're not having bad experience with scalping, to make sure they're being taken care of when they can, because that's our market. And then also to take care of the promoter who's coming through, because we want their business. We want to keep them coming back, and we want to keep serving them. So venues are in a really cool spot. It's also just, I'm very thankful for my position in my job. I get to see concerts sometimes every day for a week. It's amazing. The amount of concerts, plays, sporting events, and things I have been to because I'm being paid to be there, which is extremely incredible. I'm so thankful for it. I saw so many concerts and shows before I was working professionally in the industry. I mean, that number is gone up by 10 since I've worked in the industry. And I've seen acts that I could never afford to go see before. And it's just incredible to be in that experience. Sometimes it's stressful, sometimes it's really hard. But when you're in a room with 7,000 people who are all screaming and cheering, or you're seeing one of your favorite artists on your stage, it's a really cool feeling. And one of the cool things too in our industry is, when I was, before I became a professional in it, I would brag about the shows I saw. I'd be like, oh yeah, I saw so and so here, I saw this show there, I was at that one. Now essentially people kind of brag about who comes in our buildings. Yeah, we had that person come in on this date, we had this people here, those people are great to work with. It's a really cool experience to have that. So lastly, I have questions, and you guys have a lot of them here, so I'm just going to try to start knocking through them. Some of them I have already answered, so sorry if you guys have felt a little ignored. I don't mean to do that at all. The knowledge you use in your job, do you feel you learned it at Albright while taking the classes, or more while on the job, or just by doing the job? I heard you also majored in the arts, so did that help as long with the music industry major? Yes, it did. I will be honest. I was not as prepared as other graduates coming into the industry for my line of work. I did learn a lot of it on the job. And that's why I did kind of feel it was really important to go over kind of the whole overview of the event for you guys. So you guys did have that. Albright does prepare you for a lot of it and gives you a great overview of the industry. Like I said before, my time at WXAC was incredible to have that experience. That really helped me as I moved on. And I also majored in arts administration with David Tanner, who was absolutely incredible. And I learned a lot from professionally as well as personally. I was very fortunate to have a lot of great mentors in my life, and still moving forward, even professionally with an ASM and at Albright, who have really helped and shaped what I've become. As a graduate of Albright, how did you handle the transition from college to career? And what are some of the successes and failures that you overcame? Also, you mentioned your cat. He's the best cat in the world. But how's your aquarium doing these days? Thank you very much for mentioning that. So the transition is a little hard. It is hard for some people. I think it was easier for me because I was working part-time during my time at Albright there at the venue. But it's just a weird thing. And you're not around your friends a lot more. You can't just walk to the campus center and see a lot of people, which I know a lot of everyone is kind of experiencing now. But it is a little bit of a hard transition, but you do kind of get used to it. Your relationships mean a lot more when you have to put a lot of effort into them, and everybody else has put a lot of effort into them too, because everyone has a lot going on. I'm very bad at texting. I'm very bad at keeping in touch with people. But when I get a text from a friend I haven't talked to in a while, I love that. And I think about them. I think about the friendship we have, and I talk to them and catch up. I'm a very kind of a person where, we cannot talk for a year and we're still as good of friends as we were the last time we talked. So that is some hard for some people to deal with. I did want to touch on the COVID-19. So COVID-19 is kind of crazy with everything going on right now. We are one of the heavier hit industries with COVID. And it does kind of cause a lot of uncertainty because, in my state now in Virginia, the governor declared no groups of 10 or more, which if you've been to a concert, it's a little bit more than 10. It is a pretty lame mosh pit. There's only 9 people in it. So it does affect us a lot, but we've been working extremely hard the last couple of weeks to get dates moved, to get customers taken care of, and to make sure everything is going as planned. I do see that AJ joined in. Do you want me to keep taking questions here, or pause for now?
Actually, during our Q&A and the panel discussion, we can rehash these questions. Thanks everyone so much for asking all those wonderful questions. And thanks so much, Trent, for your amazing presentation. We have Brianna queued up next. Look, you guys are on both sides. It's great.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Trent. We'll see you later.
Thank you.
So our next amazing presentation comes from Brianna Coutinho. She is a manager of revenue assurance at Warner Music Group, working with data to monetize WMG masters in the neighboring rights space. Her career in the music industry began in her early teens, thanks to MySpace and live concerts at the Long Island venue, The Crazy Donkey. After years of street teaming, attending concerts, promoting artists, and selling merchandise, Brianna attended Albright College to pursue a bachelor's in music business and communication. While at Albright, she devoted her time to Lion Enterprises, Alternative Spring Break, and the admission office. Following graduation in 2015, Brianna worked full-time as a licensing and data management agent at the Harry Fox Agency for several years prior to joining WMG in 2018. While Brianna is not working, attending concerts, or listening to music, she is watching reality TV, traveling, or petting dogs. Please help me welcome Brianna Coutinho.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So it's saying I cannot share my screen right now. So let me just start.
Sorry, Brooke, she's going to log back in so she can share her screen. Give us 2 seconds and we'll get right going for you.
Hello, I believe this is all working now. Let me share my screen and I'm excited to start. Okay. Perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Brianna. I'm so excited to be speaking with all of you. And as Trent said before, we're so sorry that we can't be meeting with you in person, but it's awesome that we're able to do this online. So yeah, let me start. First of all, I just want to say Trent did an amazing job. I feel like as much as I know about shows, I just learned so much more. So that was awesome. And overall, I just want to say I'm excited to see Jenna and Paul present as well. I believe this might be the first music business forum where I might not have met the students yet. I graduated in technically 2015. I was supposed to be the class of 2016, but I graduated a semester early. So I might have missed most of you. I did work in the admission office though, so I might have seen some of you on tours if you were on campus before 2015. So a little bit about myself. I am Brianna, I'm from Long Island, and I am currently the manager of the Revenue Assurance Department at Warner Music Group in New York City. So I'll get into that a little bit more to explain what some of that means later on. And I just want to share, I graduated from Albright with a degree in music business and communications, as AJ said. I was on the executive board of Lion Records as well as Alternative Spring Break. So those were probably some of my favorite memories on campus. I loved putting on the Albright Idol competitions as well as the Music Business Forum. That was one of my favorites. The first one that Albright ever had was my freshman year, and I helped put that on. And I remember meeting Paul at the first one, and it's great that now we're both presenting together. We also happen to work at the same company, so I do see him in the elevator once in a while as well. So it's crazy to see how it's come full circle. Also at that first Music Business Forum was the president of the Harry Fox Agency, which is funny because he was my mentor last year or a couple of years ago when I was working at the Harry Fox Agency. So I cannot stress enough how important these forums are, and I hope you're all enjoying them. So I also said Alternative Spring Break, just wanted to give a little shout out to that as well. That was such a big part of my campus experience. I loved it. And I also got to help with the concert committee for SGA. So we brought in the Plain White Tees and Nico and Vince and Cartel, which was a really cool one for me. As you'll learn throughout this talk, I absolutely love all of the Warped Tour bands, the emo music scene. So we'll get into some of that as well. So I have 3 different parts of my presentation that I'm going to share with you, as you can see on my screen. Royalties and relationships and royalties are my main focus. So as much as I'm sure this is a great distraction from what's going on in the world, I do want to share some more about how it's impacted the industry, just ways that you can stay active in the industry. I know right now internship programs are being canceled and there aren't as many things that you can do. You can't go to shows, different things. So how to stay active in the music industry while you're home. And I also want to have a little conversation about, how I started in the music industry. AJ said as he said, I was in the industry for at least 10 years now. I started when I was 13, just helping out bands. So I want to share how that all started. I love the background stories. I listened to plenty of podcasts about it. Highly suggest The Lead Singer Syndrome if you're interested in hearing how a lot of musicians got their breaks in the industry, how they write songs and all of that. And then my third part is the royalties. Definitely not the sexiest part of the music industry, but as I've worked in the industry, I've learned so much about different roles and different places. And there are so many job opportunities in the industry that I didn't even know existed. And royalties is something I fell into and I love it. And I want to share some information on that and how you can get into that. Okay. So let's start with building relationships. So the first thing I have here is how can I build my network without leaving my house? So I know we're all in the same position right now. I haven't left my house in over 3 weeks. So everyone I'm sure is getting a little stir crazy. Of course, I want to preface this with you do not have to be productive. You do not have to feel like you need to do more work than you are. I know it's crazy times, we're all adjusting, but if you are looking for some things to do without leaving your home, whether it's during quarantine or self-isolation or in general. So these are things that I check in on every couple of days just to see what's going on in the industry, make new friends, see different ways that maybe I can connect with people. So I know first, networking was a word that I was afraid of for a while. I thought it was a little intimidating. I didn't know how to necessarily network. I didn't want to talk about myself for too much or throw myself at people and make them feel like they need to talk to me. I know I felt pretty awkward during it, and I know a lot of people feel the same way. I try to think of it as just building relationships, making friends, learning about people. And when you turn it from networking and small talk into just learning more about the industry and taking it as like an educational and friendship approach, it definitely does wonders. So that being said, we're living in a digital age. Social media is super helpful for the industry. I know we're all seeing the Instagram lives, the Twitch streams, the Facebook, TikTok, all of that. So musicians are definitely staying active. If you're a musician, I highly suggest kind of getting into some of that, seeing ways that you can build your brand, connect with fans, make new fans, and connect with other artists as well if you want to join one of those live streams or talk to them. But the biggest thing as a music business professional that I find helpful are Facebook groups. So I know a lot of people say Facebook is a little outdated. It's for, our parents and things like that. But I am in several groups and they've been extremely helpful on finding new opportunities, helping friends find jobs or internships. And some of those, there's a few women-focused ones for women in the industry, Girls Behind the Rock Show, Women in Music, and Women Crush Music. Those organizations are awesome. I highly suggest them, and I can definitely send links later on. Those groups have some great opportunities to connect with musicians, to connect with music business professionals, as well as, students that are just trying to get some experience and learn more. There are also some other great ones for all genders, like the music industry. I think it's called Career Networking Group, Music Business Besties. There's a bunch of fun ones. And then what events can I attend to build my network? So once we're all able to leave our homes, for me, concerts were a big one. I loved meeting fans at concerts. When shows are small enough that you can meet the bands. I definitely, when I was younger, would talk to all of the crew members, talk to the merch people, talk to everyone around the venue and see what they do, if they liked it, what kind of shows they have been working on. I would talk to security, everyone. I just was so fascinated. There's also a cool story about some events that um, I used to go to shows, as AJ said, at the Crazy Donkey on Long Island. And there was a guy that would be at every show, and I would see him for 10 years on. Every show I'd go to, he'd be there. Forever the Sickest Kids, All Time Low, all those bands. He'd be side stage at the shows, and he started a radio show. And as the years gone by, we've known each other and we started getting to know each other more. And it was just so awesome that we could have this relationship. And then 2 months ago, I'm walking in the office at Warner and he's standing there. There are people that will come back into your life. The industry is small, so definitely if you see these people, say hello, introduce yourself, get to know them, because they'll probably come back. And now I am working with him on trying to get one of our artists on his radio show. So things like that happen and it's awesome. Um, and then some other great events, the Music Business Forum, like I said, a huge event to build your network. It also take advantage of all the students around you. There are so many great relationships that you can make. Trent is one of my good friends. I love working with him at college and I love talking to him. And it's great to see everything that he's been doing. And I feel like I always learn from him when I talk to him. Stay in touch with those people. There are also some great Albright alumni in New York that I talk to as much as I can. And we have a meetup and all different things. And definitely stay in touch with people, see what they're up to, whether it's just following them on Instagram or being friends on social media or hanging out and getting to know each other, maybe starting your own company, whatever it could be. Take advantage of the relationships that you have in front of you. All of these students are passionate and have a drive to work in the industry that you want to work in. So definitely make sure you build that. And then also some more events. There's the Launch Music Conference, which they have in Pennsylvania. So I went to that. It was great. Kevin Lyman from Warped Tour was there. There were a bunch of other great speakers about sync, about record deals, about touring. And it's great to hear that and meet with other people. Also highly suggest volunteering at these events. That's a great way to meet other people that are aspiring to be in the industry and want to start working in it and kind of get some other things on your resume. And then going back to without leaving your home, what you can do, how can you get experience in the music industry online? So this is definitely a super cool thing that I've been finding on those Facebook groups I was talking about. I have seen so many job postings, internship postings, volunteer. So if you're interested in blogging, writing, photography, doing interviews with bands, writing reviews, any of that, highly suggest joining some of these Facebook groups. There's so many opportunities and some of them are paid, some are not paid. Other opportunities, if you're interested in management or social media, graphic design, if you are interested in making music videos or animation, whatever it may be. There's also opportunities on these groups as well. And another big thing that I suggest and I've done and it's worked in my favor is send some emails to musicians that you like, DM them on Instagram or send an email, say, I'm a fan of your music and I'd like to work with you. Maybe it's a local group or a band that doesn't have as big of a following and you're looking and you're saying like, I really wish they did this in their social media or different things here and there that might help you out. So I think that would be something helpful. 1 second, sorry, I'm seeing that there is a question. For some reason, I cannot view the question. Okay, I don't know if you're seeing this, so sorry if you are. So what do you recommend for someone who wants to stand out on social media or in conversation when they're doing it? So yeah, to stand out, be yourself is the biggest thing. I would say definitely it's great to talk yourself up. I think, the elevator pitches are hard, but say what you're able to do. Don't be shy with it. Something I've always been modest and I won't say, oh, I can definitely do that, or I'm not afraid to, whatever. I used to be so afraid of just saying, like, hey, I'm great at this. And finally, I was like, you know what? I love music. I love helping people, and I'm going to tell them I'm great. So try not to be shy. A way to stand out with resumes, business cards, some of those types of things. I try to add some color and personality to it. Um, I also think it's great to have follow up, send emails. And if you know things about the person, don't be afraid to tell them, like, I love the company that you work at, or talk about an article that they've posted. Do your research if you know that you're meeting someone. But if it's just um, a situation where you don't know the person and you're just meeting for the first time, definitely share the things you're working on. If there's a cool project at school, or share your view on something going on in the industry, it shows a lot of courage. First, just talking to the person in general. I think I remember everyone that comes up to me and just will ask me a question, but also just show that you're interested, and try to engage in the conversation. I think that will go a long way. And then um, going into how to get experience in the music industry online for part of that. So I was talking about, if you're passionate about things, what I did, I sent an email to an artist that I liked and I said, hey, I'm interested in getting into social media. I majored in public relations, but I haven't done much with it. And I'd like to get some volunteering or internship under my belt while I'm working, just to kind of stay active. From there, I started running all of her social media. I did all of the content and digital strategy for her. And she got 2 albums on the Billboard charts. So some of these opportunities happen. And from there, I started learning how to make a music video, how to edit lyric videos, things like that. And those experiences will come. So don't be afraid to just send that email and do that cold call or whatever it is. And I think it'll go a long way. So that was a little bit about building relationships. Sorry if it was a little all over the place. I'm learning technology, and as we all are. So I will go on to the next slide, tell you more about myself, why I'm here, and why the music industry. So as far as my background information, so why the music industry? Why did I want to work here? So I have been passionate about music for as long as I can remember. I remember going to my first concert somewhat because I was 5. We saw the Backstreet Boys, and I fell asleep during their second song. So I remember my parents were very upset. I did love the show in general, but I've never fallen asleep at a show since. Something my parents just really built this love and interest in music. And my dad, on record release day, which used to be on Tuesdays and not Fridays, on those Tuesdays, my dad would come with a brand new CD, as much as he could, based on like which music he thought I liked. So it would be the Aaron Carter, the Backstreet Boys, Britney Spears, whoever. But the one that really stood out to me, and like the first time I really was like into the music industry, was when I was like 8 or 9, and the Simple Plan album, No Helmet, No Pads, Just Balls, came out. And definitely not child appropriate for an 8-year-old, but my dad brought it in and was kind of like, I don't know if I should give this to you, but here. And it ended up being an album that my whole family loved, and still a band that we love and go and see. So that kind of started it. And then, as in my intro that AJ mentioned, social media did it too. So loved music, was going to concerts all throughout my childhood. And then something happened. I got a MySpace, and me and my best friend started connecting with these bands. We were talking to people in bands. We were talking to fans. We were learning about concerts before. Like, it used to be my parents would see that there was a concert coming out and they'd buy a ticket if they thought I'd want to go. But now it's, I'm hearing about bands that I like, and I'm seeing the concert listing. I'm learning about music venues. And from there, I started going to shows, and I went to my first concert without my parents. It was me and my best friend. We were 13, and we went to the Crazy Donkey, which I'll probably mention a lot. And it was the band Cute Is What We Aim For. They were signed to Fueled by Ramen, one of my favorite labels. And we got to meet the band and we got to see this awesome show. And I remember the huge crowd and just the energy, and it was so infectious. And from then, I probably went to hundreds of concerts since, several for that band. And let's see, I see another question coming in. So the standard record release day changed. I believe the shift was because of streaming. I don't have the actual answer. So between now and the panel later on, I believe Paul will have the answer to this question. Oh, AJ's answering. Great. Oh, skipping through. Sorry, everyone. My mouse is acting up today. Okay, so as I talked about, going to concerts, and then from there, I started street teaming. So I met a bunch of different fans that were as passionate about the music industry as I was, and we would go to all these shows together. We started a group called Front Row or Don't Go. We would wait outside shows for hours, and it was awesome. We saw so many different groups that I still love and are on all of my emo night playlist. Yeah, so then, as I said, street teaming, and it was putting up posters, making stickers, meeting local bands, and becoming a part of the local music scene. And then I started street teaming for the record label Capital EMI, which is no longer one of the major labels. And from there, I just started networking, meeting more people. I booked some of my first concerts. One of the shows I was really proud of booking with one of my best friends was the band Paris, who is now opening for Halsey. So it's just awesome to see some of these bands and how big they're getting. So those are some of my experiences early on. I was the merch girl for a couple of bands, doing social media, and then it got to the point where I was picking a college and I wasn't sure what to do. I applied to a bunch of different ones, and Albright stood out to me. I visited the campus, I sat in on a class. I think I visited the campus 3 times, which is quite the drive from New York for going 3 times, but it was so worth it. And I just fell in love. And in 2012 is when they brought Lion Records back. It was like somewhat existing, but we really built it up the couple of years before I started. And then once I got on campus, it was like really growing, and we got to go to recording studios, and we did photo shoots and different shows and experiences, and it was definitely an awesome experience. I loved going to Albright. I miss it dearly. I've learned so much, and it really built me for where I ended up being. So from there, during my, I believe, freshman or sophomore year, I entered at a venue called the Emporium. So there I did promotion, I did street teaming, I was a runner, so I got to get bagels for Scotty McCreery and some other artists. And it was just a great way to learn the behind the scenes. And then leading up to my first job, I got an internship my senior year at the Harry Fox Agency. And I initially applied for a marketing internship, which they said they already found the person for marketing. And they asked me if I'd be interested in licensing and data management. So I remembered learning about licensing, and it was interesting, but something I wasn't fully into. I didn't really know as much about it as I thought I did. And it was something that was kind of still like, I got it, but didn't fully understand. And I was like, okay, well, maybe. So I started learning more about licensing, and I was like, okay, maybe I will take this internship. But the other part of it was data management. I knew how to use Excel, but barely in a way that was data management. And I was like, I don't even know how to manage data or what data truly is. So I remember being like, I think I'm a little in over my head. But I was like, this is an opportunity and I'm going to take it. So I did, and I was really proud of myself. And it was in New York City. I interned there for a few months. It was an awesome program. I took advantage of it. I set up one-on-ones with a lot of people in the company, the head of like business development, marketing, because I was initially interested in that. And from there, I learned how much I really do like licensing and data management, especially the data. I was learning a lot of Excel tricks and I was becoming comfortable with large data sets. And also just understanding what data is and what um, the licensing aspects are and what a mechanical license is, which I'll get into. And it was something I met so many great people and I loved it. So I made sure to connect with everyone. I shared my contact information before I left. One of the big things that I suggest doing if you're at an internship, write thank you notes on your last day. It's definitely a way to make an impression. I had little notes to everyone, thanking them for the things that they taught me and telling them when I was graduating because you never know. So it's good to stay up to date with all of that and connect with people and keep that going. So then I went back to campus. My internship ended in August. I started school a couple of weeks later, and I got a call and I asked my boss at the Harry Fox agency for a recommendation for a job. I was applying to a job, I believe at Sony, and she said, "Hey, I would love to give you a recommendation. I'll do it for you. But also, would you like to work in our department?" So they had an opening and I was so excited I got to join the team right away. So this is not a typical situation in the industry. And I don't want you to think that this is just an easy thing that will happen for everyone and it's tough. But it was a once in a lifetime opportunity and I took it and I was so excited. I joined that team and I worked there full time for 3 years. Something really cool about my experience in the industry is so far in the past 5 years, I've not had the same role in each year. So it has changed every single year. I went from intern to working there full time to part time to full time. And then I was promoted to a senior agent, which I ran all of our data management team. So that was an amazing experience. And then following my time at or during after 3 years, I found an opportunity at the Warner Music Group that I couldn't say no to. It just seemed like a great fit and a great team. So I joined the revenue assurance and IRI team. So I manage the revenue assurance. The IRI is a section of our department as well. We're a very small team. We're 3 or 4 people, depending on if we have an intern at the time. So we are growing, but at the moment, it's just the 3 of us. Revenue assurance is driven by me and my one coworker. And what we do is work in the neighboring rights space. So I'm going to get into all of that in royalties. I'm not going to confuse you yet. So what we do is make claims on behalf of Warner Music Group. So we are responsible for asserting Warner's claims on tracks and making revenue, as well as working on claims conflicts at the local society Sound Exchange, which is the US society. And I think it's been a great opportunity so far, and I've been promoted to manager in the past few months, and it's been a great challenge and really excited to share more once we get into royalties. The other side of our department, which I think is amazing, is called the IRI. So something that might sound a little confusing, so bear with me, is that Warner is a huge company. So we have labels all over the globe. So we have a Warner Music Denmark, we have Warner Music South Africa, Australia, Canada, Brazil, all different offices. There are so many. We work with 38 of we call them affiliates, the different countries under Warner Music Group. So this part of the department, there are artists that are signed to, Warner UK or Warner Australia that are not picked up by a US label, which means that their music is not being released in the US. Our department releases all of the music that is not being picked up by the US label that is being released by Warner Music affiliates that are non-US. So some of those examples that are now getting a little bit bigger, before she was signed to Atlantic, Maisie Peters was a part of our department, and now she's huge. Her streaming numbers are incredible. One of my favorite artists, Lewis Watson, was once a part of the IRI. Also Scott Hellman, who's a big act from Canada. They're all building, and it's so great. And our goal is to build these artists in the US, build their presence, and then hope that they get signed by a major label so they can get in the US so they can get some placements. So that is a big summary of who I am. And sorry if it was a little wordy, we are all social distancing, so I haven't had as many conversations as I'm used to. So that is my background, and now I wanna get into some royalties. If you have any questions at all during this, please let me know. I'm gonna answer all questions at the end just so we can flow through it and then make sure that we have time for questions. And after that, we will also have the panel, so I'm happy to answer anything then as well. And I did mention to AJ, if anyone does have questions for me or wants to have a one-on-one or has anything that they want to discuss with me, I'd be happy to set up one-on-ones, whether it's call, video, email, whatever works best. And I definitely will be happy to share all of that with you. All right, so now getting into royalties, hopefully. So introduction to royalties. So right here, don't get too scared by the text. The picture in the center is where we want to start. So there is a song called Love Me the Same. The artist is Dan Kaplan. It's a great song. If you haven't heard of it, I highly suggest it. So there are two parts of the song, or two copyrights. So the first one is the underlying composition. So this song is called Love Me the Same. It's written by Daniel S. Kaplan, who is also the artist, and the publisher is BMG Rights Management. The underlying composition is the song that is written. So it's the lyrics, it's the melody, it's the music, it's the music that's written. And that's the underlying composition. On the other side of it is the sound recording or the master recording. I like to just call it the master. So in case there's any confusion, please let me know. The song here is Love Me the Same by the artist Dan Kaplan, and the label or the rights owner is Atlantic UK. So the sound recording is what you're listening to. So if you're streaming that music, it's what you hear. If you are buying the CD or getting the vinyl, what you're listening to is that sound recording. So once it's in that format, it's a sound recording. The underlying composition is what that written song is. I'm seeing some questions, so I know this can get confusing. So, okay. Now, under these two different copyrights, there are different royalties involved. So first, let me just, in case there's any confusion on what a royalty is, I want to make sure everything is as clear as possible because it can get a bit confusing. So a royalty is the sum of money paid to a copyright owner. So it's for each performance or play or unit of a song that's sold, each stream. So there are royalties or money that is paid based on certain rates and based on kind of what is happening to the song, whether it's being played in public or whether it's being recorded or released. So I'm going to get into that in a little finer detail here. So, all right. Royalties for composition. So that's songwriting, that song that's written, that underlying composition. Who receives the royalties for the underlying composition? So the royalties for the written song goes to that songwriter. So it would be Dan Kaplan, and then the publisher, who is BMG Rights Management in this case. So the royalties for that composition would go to the two of them. There are two different types of royalties that an underlying composition is entitled to. The first one is a mechanical royalty, which is what I worked on at the Harry Fox Agency, or HFA, in case I do use the acronym. So mechanical royalties are something that a lot of people get confused about. And I think I'm going to try to explain it the simplest way as possible. So what it is, so first I'll start with some little facts. It was started in 1909 through the Copyright Act. So what it is the money that's paid to the copyright owner, so that songwriter and that publisher, for the manufacture or distribution of a sound recording of that song. So what it is in the US specifically, a song must be licensed to anyone who wants to use it in a phonorecord. So if this underlying composition is used in a song, so if it's on a CD, an MP3, if it's going to be streamed, there's a royalty involved that needs to be paid to those songwriters. So it is required when a composition is released through a sound recording. So overall, it's just money getting paid if if a recording of the song is being released. Who pays the royalties? So the royalties can get paid out by usually just two different options for here. So one of the main things on who will pay the royalties, the labels. So for the most part, if the label is just distributing an album that has songs with the underlying compositions, so if they're distributing an album, they need to pay the royalties on each underlying composition for those songs. So say it's just a single and Warner UK is releasing the Dan Kaplan track, they are going to pay royalties to Dan Kaplan and his publisher, BMG Rights Management. And this typically is the case when it comes to releasing physical versions of a song. So if it's a CD, if it's a vinyl, an MP3 or download, it can get a little tricky because now with streaming, of course, this law was started, the Copyright Act was started in 1909. Streaming did not exist, and there have been some updates through the years. But with streaming, it still can get a little tricky. Right now, on demand or interactive streaming services such as Spotify are actually responsible for acquiring the licenses for the songs on their service. So Spotify will send over a list of all of these songs, and I'll tell you where they're collected. So they'll send those lists and they will get licenses for each of those songs, which will in turn pay out the money to the songwriters and publishers for all of the songs on their service. So how can these get collected? So who is Spotify or the label sending these requests to, or the licenses is what they're called, in order to pay out the royalties? So there are two different options for this as well. So the first one are collection societies. So the Harry Fox Agency being one of them. There's also MRI. Those are two of the biggest collection societies at the moment. In the US. There are other societies around the world. So I'm going to talk specifically about the US royalties. So HFA, or the Harry Fox Agency, and MRI, they collect and distribute mechanical licenses and royalties. So they have a system or a rights management system where they collect this data. They work with the publishers and the songwriters to get songs registered into their songs. So they have a database of all of the tracks. So they will have what the splits are. So maybe there's a song with multiple songwriters on it. So, you know, if say I wrote a song with Trent, the two of us would be on there as well as both of our publishers. So that's one of the options, is going through a collection society. Another option is going straight to the publisher and songwriter. So the label and the publisher and songwriter can create a deal. Some of the times it will reduce the royalty rate, so they won't have to pay as much. Other times it could be a deal that they have ongoing, or maybe there is something like there could be a special event going on, or if it's for a charity, or a university is recording a song that they want to put on an album, or something like that, they could possibly have a deal with the label and the publisher to work on the song for free. So there are some ways around that as well. And then the last section I have for mechanical royalties is how is this impacted by the MMA, the Music Modernization Act. So I'm sure many of you have heard about this. I know this has been a large topic for a while now, and I believe it was finally passed about a year ago. And part of that is the Mechanical Licensing Collective, or the MLC, which is responsible for all of the mechanical royalties and licensing for the industry in the US. So the Harry Fox Agency was just selected a couple of months ago. and it's going to be a great project for them. It's awesome. They already have a huge database to work on already. So they'll be working with the labels and the publishers and songwriters to make sure all of these songs are registered. So right now, the way that mechanical royalties work in the US is that it's on a song by song basis. So you will need to pay those royalties for each song. So most of the time, these songs will get a unique ID in, the HFA system. And then the label will come and license that song. Now, with the new MLC, they want to do a blanket license. So instead of having to do track by track, you'll just pay a set fee and it will go towards these songs. So that's the biggest change. And another thing that I think is a great change is that now there will be a public database. So the public will be able to access all of the tracks that are currently available in the HFA system to make sure that their tracks are on there, to make sure their shares are correct, to make sure that all of the songwriters are listed, and make sure the data is as clean as possible. So I think that's going to be awesome. I'm really excited about it. And I guess now that we've talked about mechanical licenses, my role at the Harry Fox Agency was to license so I worked directly with the labels and publishers to make sure. With the publishers, the data management side was to make sure all of their shares were registered in our system, to make sure all of the song data was correct. One of my main projects was to make sure there were no duplicates in the system, which is a hard thing to do. So that was one of my main responsibilities, and then licensing those. So there's a bulk licensing system, and there's also, track by track. The bulk licensing system would be if Spotify or a label or other streaming service sent in a file with all of the tracks that are on their system. It would run through a matching system, and then we would review it, and it would license to those tracks in our system. So that was about mechanical royalties. There's a lot to it, and definitely an interesting space in the industry. And then the other side of it are performance royalties. So performance royalties is money that is generated for a performance or a broadcast of an underlying composition. So if it's played at a concert, if your song is being played in a hotel or a bar, if it's being played in a store, any of that, this money is going to be paid out to the songwriter and publisher. So the royalties are paid by the venue. So usually these are blanket licenses. So the venue will pay a blanket license to, I'll tell you where they're collected in a second. So they'll pay a blanket license. It could be the store. It could also be a bowling alley, whoever it is, whoever's playing those songs, and then broadcasters as well. So whoever's playing the song on the radio, they will have to pay these royalties, which are collected at performance rights organizations. So ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC. So as I said, they're blanket licenses that usually get paid to them and then will go to the publisher and songwriter. So if you are a songwriter and you have your music being released, I highly suggest registering your songs at a PRO as well as registering it at a collection society like HFA and MRI to make sure that you're getting the royalties that are due to you. And another cool thing with the PROs, so if you're performing these songs, you can log into their system, put in your performances, which songs you were able to play, and it's an easier way to try to get your songs in there to register for those royalties. Yeah, so that was the royalties for compositions. Now I'm going to get into the royalties for the master recording or the sound recording. So who receives royalties for the master recording? These royalties go to the artist and the label. So these royalties are typically split in half between the artist and the label or the master recording owner. There are times where the artist could also own the master. So sometimes they might get that 100%, but for the most case in my day-to-day, it is the 50% between the artist and the label. So this is where it gets a little tricky. I'm sure you've heard the term neighboring rights, and we just talked about performance royalties. So public performance and broadcast royalties, the same as performance royalties, are called neighboring rights when it refers to a sound recording. So the It's pretty much the same. It is royalties that are generated based on the public performance of a work. So if it's on the radio, if it's being performed, if you hear it at a store, those types of things, it's now going to be paid to the sound recording or the owner of that sound recording. In this space, it's called neighboring rights. It's just a way to differentiate so you know that it's for the sound recording versus the underlying composition. So these royalties are paid again from the broadcasters, from where, from the store, from, the television network, whatever it is that is using these tracks. And then how can these be collected? So in the US, there is only one place where these royalties are collected, which is Sound Exchange. Sound Exchange was created, I believe, in 2000, which then they began in 2003. So this is part of Congress. And I believe there was a certain act that started it. Let me see. Yeah, so they started in 2003 and they are responsible for collecting these royalties. The US is a little different than the rest of the world. It's not as far ahead as far as these royalties. Right now, the royalties that are collected in the neighboring rights space in the US are typically internet radio and cable TV, as well as non-interactive web and streaming. So SiriusXM, iHeartRadio, radio stations, some different radio stations as well. Mostly Sirius, iHeart, and I believe Clear Channel as well, which I believe is iHeart now, and Pandora. So those are some examples on who would be paying in the US. There is a big fight in the industry to kind of expand that. In the rest of the world, it is pretty typical with the types of royalties that you'll be seeing on the other side. So the reason I wanted to share more about neighboring rights is this is the new space that I'm working in. This is my day-to-day now, is what I've been doing. Neighboring rights are huge in the industry. I think they're probably one of the most underrated parts. The public performance broadcast royalties are 14% of the industry, so of the industry's global revenue. And it's a $2 billion revenue source in the industry. And a lot of people barely know what it is. Right now, there are even deals going on. So Lewis Capaldi, who's one of the biggest artists right now, dominating the charts, just signed a neighboring rights deal with Cobalt, which is something that I have never seen before and is becoming more relevant and becoming a bigger deal in the industry because people are starting to realize the money that is sitting there and the opportunities. So I got into a little bit about what these neighboring rights royalties are and who pays them, and started with Sound Exchange, getting into what they do. So how their system works is that broadcasters will send in their data and they'll share all of the songs that they're reporting from what they've been playing. The labels and the master rights owners, and which are called rights owners at Sound Exchange, and the artists are able to register their songs as well. If the songs match, that revenue will go to that artist or that or the rights owner. So very similar to the rights that we were talking about before with the matching system and the reporting, but now the revenue is going to the rights owner, which the owner of the master recording, which in my case is Warner Music Group for the work that I've been doing. And this is on a quarterly basis at Sound Exchange that the revenue is paid out. They have really changed in the last few years. They have a new portal going on, which has made it very easy to claim songs on their system, which would be asserting your rights owners, your rights on those tracks. So what my day-to-day is working with Sound Exchange to make sure that Warner's being paid for all of the tracks that they have rights for. So it's working with other rights owners. There can be conflicts. So maybe another major label or another rights owner is claiming a track that is a Warner track. If they're claiming, Shape of You by Ed Sheeran, that's definitely a Warner-owned track. So resolving those. We also we call it a treasure hunt in my department. It's working to find more revenue and finding that incremental revenue for the department to all of the tracks that might not be paying us. So there's plenty of different claiming exercises, and it brings in all of my data skills. And it's been a lot of fun and definitely something great. And I'm glad that now I get to manage this department and grow within that. So that's the sound exchange part. There are plenty of societies around the globe. Some others that I work with, I assist in neighboring rights around the globe as well. So I've been helping Germany, which they have GVL. I've been helping Warner Brazil, which is ECAD as their society. The UK has PPL, Canada has Resound. And for the people that do not have the teams around the globe to work with these societies one-on-one, Sound Exchange also does have reciprocal agreements where you can register your songs in their system, and there's an option for them to assert your claim around the globe. So then you won't have to go to every society around the world and work with them, but that's also an option if you are interested. So that is my little spiel on neighboring rights. And again, I have one more slide and then I'm happy to answer any questions. And my final example, so this is kind of like a little fun example I wanted to end it with, just to go over once again the difference between an underlying composition and the master recording. So in the middle, I have a cover. There's a song called Let Me Love You, which is originally performed by Mario. A Warner Denmark artist, Drew, covered it. Absolutely love it. And this song, the underlying composition is, again, the song Let Me Love You. The composers there are Cameron, Schaefer, and Scott. So the three of them, and the publishers are Universal, Reservoir, and EMI. So that one underlying composition can have multiple sound recordings associated to it. So the sound recordings associated that I'm showing as an example are the cover that Drew did, as well as the original version by Mario. And the royalty types involved. So for both of these tracks, both of them being released means that that underlying composition will have licenses for both. So that one underlying composition, those publishers and those songwriters are going to get the mechanical and performance royalties on the underlying composition song for both of those versions of the song. Now on the master recording side, there are two different masters here. So there's two different sound recordings. So one is Drew's version, one is Mario. So they're going to get they're both going to get royalties, but for their versions of the song. So I thought that was a cool way to differentiate what I've been talking about. And I believe that's it now. And I guess one last thing I wanted to share that I didn't yet is just, I've learned there's so many different avenues to go in the music industry, and so many I didn't even know existed. I did not know that there was a future in data management and rights management for me, and it's definitely a great workspace. And there's so many departments that I work with daily that I didn't know existed. There are full teams for content, which is awesome. There are teams that work specifically with each streaming service to make sure that the songs are getting registered correctly and pitching the songs for playlisting. And the amount of legal teams that I've worked with, as well as, a team that works on their YouTube and content strategy. There's so many different avenues to go in, and I'm excited to see what all of you do. So, all right. Last thing here, thanks for listening and any questions, which I did see a good amount popping in. So I will get to those. Let's see. Okay. What advice would I give for the first week on the job? So the first thing that I would do, let's see. My first week on the job, and something that a lot of them told me was helpful, was that I asked all the right questions. You don't have to pretend you know what you're doing. I barely knew what my new job was when I started in claims management in the revenue assurance department. A lot of people say fake it till you make it. Sometimes that's the truth, but overall, ask the right questions. You don't want to be stuck in a job where you don't know what you're doing. And it's impressive to then show that you're getting a great understanding and building. Definitely connect with the team. Ask them all what they do on a day-to-day. Something else that was really cool for me my first week on the job was just to, sit and talk with people there isn't always the most amount of work to do. So it's to show that you're good at keeping busy. Ask to see if you can join in on some meetings so you can get some time to understand what they're doing. And I think those are some great options. And then my next question, what would you say most people in the industry are genuine and want themselves as well? Oh, would I say that most people in the industry are genuine and want themselves as well as others to succeed? Definitely. I think for the most part, the majority of people that I've met are helping others. Some of the music, the women in music and some of the women focus groups that I've been talking about, huge on that. But there are some people, I'm not going to lie, there were some people that weren't as excited to push me up to the top and thought of me as competition, or thought that other people were more of a competition, which really hurt them and not necessarily me. So I think, you know, one of the biggest things I have to say is be kind to everyone, and kindness will come your way, and definitely push other people. And I think what I want to see is all the people around me to succeed, and that's how a company really thrives. So I'd say definitely push forward, and kindness wins. Oh, got a question about the emo scene. Very excited. Let's see. um, I have not heard of the band Eat Your Heart Out. I will have to listen. So thank you for that suggestion. I'm writing that down right now. Okay. So what was my favorite thing to do when it came out with helping out other bands, social media, merch, other opportunities? I loved it all. I think one of my favorites was selling merch at Warped Tour for a couple of the dates. That was definitely the coolest. I thought I got to connect with so many fans, and I got to just network and get to see all of the shows. So that was the coolest opportunity. But then my favorite was just helping my friends. I think my friends in the bands, it was the coolest things. They got to play some great shows. They were opening for bands like Hawthorne Heights and some other like big emo groups. It was great to be able to be there for it and help them promote it, as well as just kind of helping them prepare for these big shows. Do I believe my skills? I've learned any skills, let's see, that I use now while taking classes at Albright. Yes, definitely. One of the big things, and the reason why I loved that it was a liberal arts college, was the amount of English classes we took. My email etiquette, I think, is one of the most helpful things. I took a couple of English classes that really prepared me on just writing a great email. And that's something that I've learned has been very effective. I also think some other skills that have nothing to do with that is just the people skills. Learning, note taking, being able to ask the right questions. Those are some of the major skills. Also, just the education in general prepared me, and just the knowledge definitely helped as well on learning what these royalties are and just the basics. And then some other skills that I've learned from taking classes at Albright. I think, as I said, the people, the writing are the biggest ones. The critical thinking is a big one. And I think those are the main ones. And I'm sure we'll get more into it in the panel. Okay, internet streaming services operate digitally. Does this present issues when distributing royalties for US-based artists, since our laws are different? So streaming services, when it comes to streaming services like Spotify and all of that, they do operate globally, but it doesn't mean that the songs are released globally. So some of those might not. So there are, depending on what the situations are, the laws are a bit different, but more of just the amount of royalties that are distributed to those rights owners is different, not necessarily the type of license. Okay, there is a portion of the MMA that introduced the idea of recording artists receiving performance royalties as well as songwriters. So I know a big thing in there were for producers in the MMA were for producers to receive performance royalties. Recording artists are receiving performance royalties at the moment. So I believe producers, and I know that is added. I'll look more into the question that you have exactly, Kylie, though. Um, Sampling is a lot different than mechanical licensing. So for sampling, you have to get rights from the master recording owner as well as additional rights. So it can get a little tricky. I highly suggest reaching out to the owner of that recording and working from there, because you'll have to get permission to use that song as well as the rights for mechanicals. So, oh, I like this question. If you have had the chance to work with Sony instead of HFA, would I have taken the opportunity to work with Sony or stay with HFA? So that's a tough one. I do think about it. Where would I be if I took that other job or had that opportunity? I think I would have stayed with HFA just because I knew everyone and I was comfortable. But I guess it depended on what the role truly would have been. But yeah, I think right now where I am, I'm glad I chose HFA. And then any advice that I have for people starting off as interns, plenty. Be friends with the other interns. That's the biggest one. They're all going to be a part of the industry soon. And it's great to have them on your side. Work as hard as you possibly can. Don't be afraid to show off. Meet with your manager as much as you possibly can. And then the last thing that I'd say for that is to stay connected with everyone after you leave. And I guess not the last thing. The last thing now is to make sure that you stay in touch with people and ask a lot of questions. And again, work as hard as possible. Hard work pays off and kindness pays off. Be nice about things, be open about things. Be as honest as possible too. If you don't understand what someone's expressing to you or trying to explain to you, definitely get that clarity and make sure that you feel confident in what you're doing. And this is an experience where a lot of the time interns are not getting paid, or if they are, it's not as much as the other people around them. So definitely take advantage of the opportunity, work as hard as possible, and don't be afraid to ask questions. And depending on what the company is like, definitely try to see if you're able to work with, if you're able to do one-on-ones with other people in the company, ask them where they started and just try to get around the company to meet some other people. So I know I'm over time. I'm happy to answer more questions, but not sure what AJ would like.
Yeah, let's actually take one more. Pick your favorite one, and then if everyone could ask their favorite question during the panel discussion, that'll be perfect.
Awesome. Okay, let me read through. There's a few different ones. Okay. Oh, there are two that I might just quickly answer. So the first one is about HFA. Do you need to be affiliated with or have your own publishing company in order to register your songs? So you don't need to be affiliated with HFA to be able to register your songs, but you do need to have a publishing entity. For that, you can just use your own name. And in that case, you would use, I think it's your social security number, set it up as a there is a W-2 form that you submit, and that's all you need to be able to create that account and register your songs. And then the last one that I'm going to answer is that someone went back to the 4th Annual Music Business Forum that I spoke about the importance of confidence. Has there been a moment early in your career where I didn't capitalize on the opportunity due to a lack of confidence? Definitely. And I still deal with that today. I think sometimes it's hard to be confident in moments where you're unsure of yourself or unsure of what situation it could be in. There have been moments where I could have talked to people and didn't. And that was definitely something that I look back on. And there are still moments today where there are some people in Warner that are just so big in the company that I could be meeting with that I don't always capitalize on that opportunity just because I'm kind of newer in the company. But now I've kind of taken that approach and I am more confident than ever and will be happy to jump into someone's office and ask them the questions that I need. So it was definitely something tough. And I know there have been multiple times where I've sent an email instead of setting up a call, or different things that I think you could do to just make a moment better, and highly suggest staying confident and knowing that you're capable of doing the thing that you want to do, and work hard. So that is my last bit until the panel.
Thanks
So
so much, Brianna. Amazing presentation as always. I'm
thanks.
excited to talk to you later. And again, if anyone has questions later, please submit it to the Q&A on Zoom. Thank you all for visiting us for the first half of the day, our Zoom attendees and our YouTube attendees all live. We're going to take a brief intermission until 1 o'clock. Enjoy your lunch, and we'll see you then. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the 8th Annual Music Business Forum. Again, my name is AJ Merlino. I'm the Director of Music Industry Studies and an Associate Dean at Albright College. I'm really happy to introduce the first presentation that we have in the afternoon, Jenna Olivo. Originally from New Jersey, Jenna is a 2013 graduate of Albright College, where she doubled major in business administration and marketing and minored in music business. Post-graduation, she moved to Nashville, Tennessee after landing an internship with digital marketing department at the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum. After stops at both Broadcast Music Inc. and Universal Music Publishing Group, she now has been part of the Warner Music Group family for the past 2 years. Outside of the office, you can find her on one of Nashville's many hiking trails, volunteering at the Country Music Hall of Fame, or at Nashville's Music Cares and Ambassadors. Please help me welcome Jenna.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here today. Unfortunately, we couldn't be at Albright, and I was really excited for that, as it would have been my first time back on campus after graduating. But here we are, and I'm glad that we were able to make this happen virtually. First, I thought I would start out with a little bit of my background and basically how I got to be where I am today. As AJ mentioned, I graduated in May of 2013 from Albright, and I moved to Nashville in September of 2013 for an unpaid internship at the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum. I originally had 2 internships. My first internship was in the development department, and then my second internship was in the digital marketing department. From there, I moved to a part-time job at BMI, and I was working there 4 days a week, while also working at the Ryman Auditorium, doing artist merch and working in the gift shop. Eventually, after almost 2 years at BMI, I decided to leave for a full-time job in marketing. After I worked in marketing for 2 years, I switched back into music, working at Universal Music Publishing Group, and then Warner Music Group. My internships at the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum were great. Although unpaid, I know not everybody can afford to do an unpaid internship, but luckily I had family in the Nashville area that I was able to live with while I did this. My first internship was in the development department, and I assisted the development team with executing events for the museum's top donors and sponsors. Basically, every time there was a new exhibit, let's say it was a Casey Musgraves exhibit, we would invite all of the top guests and people that helped sponsor the exhibit and the museum to see the exhibit before it opened to the public. I also got a cool opportunity to work at the 2013 medallion ceremony, which is basically like a Hall of Fame induction. And there's usually 3 artists each year that are chosen for that. From there, I moved on to the digital marketing department, where I was in charge of composing and scheduling all of the posts for all of their social media platforms. And around this time, the museum was revamping their website, so I got to assist with some HTML and edit a few pages of that. Then I moved on to BMI, where I was there for 2 years. Originally, I was a business development specialist, where I worked in, essentially it was a call center. I don't know if you've been to like bars or restaurants. When you're walking in the door, there's like a sticker that says music licensed by BMI or music licensed by ASCAP or CSAC. That basically means that they're already paying for a music license if they have, let's say, karaoke, live music, a DJ, trivia. So part of my job was to call bars, restaurants, clubs, even hotels, ski resorts, all sorts of places where there could possibly be music use. And we would ask them like, oh, do you have any live music on this day? Is there a cover charge? And things like that. And we had a list in our system of places where we knew they had live music use, but they were not paying for a license. So our job is to generate leads that were then sent on to the sales department, and then the sales department would call and sell the music license. From there, I moved on to the customer relations department, where I helped follow up on these leads, and we would call and double check on owners and if they needed to renew their license and stuff like that. After being at BMI for 2 years, as I mentioned, I moved back to marketing for 2 years. And I did that because I felt like my marketing experience that I had was super outdated. The only marketing experience I had was from college internships. And at that time, I was thinking that I wanted to work in the music industry within the marketing, something in marketing, I wasn't sure. And I felt like if I was applying for jobs, they wouldn't necessarily pick me for an interview because I wasn't doing anything in marketing. So I did that for 2 years until this position at Universal Music Publishing Group kind of fell into my lap. This was in the Global Data Services department. So basically, we worked with all of the global offices that we had, and we would get statements in. There were sometimes they were manual and handwritten. Other times they were large Excel documents. I think I worked on one that had 1 million lines, which is insane. And we had to use pretty high level Excel skills, pivot tables, a lot of formulas to reformat them so that we could upload them into our system. Our system only was able to recognize US dollars. So if we were getting something from China or England, everything had to be converted. I only did this for like 7 to 8 months, and then I moved on to Warner, where I've been for 2 years today. So at Warner, currently I am the Senior Contracts Administrator in the Reporting Administration Department. What that means is that my department is responsible for entering all of the artist recording agreements into our royalty system. So after the artist signs with the label, we get sent that recording contract, which I will go into on another slide. In addition to entering in the recording agreements, I also am in charge of new releases. So we'll get like calendar updates with a release that's coming out, let's say in 2 weeks. And our job is to make sure that before that's released, we have everything in the system to make sure that it's going to calculate correctly. Let's see, I think I have a question coming. Okay, I'm going to answer this one towards the end, if you guys don't mind. Move on to the next slide. So I was able to get approval to show you guys what an actual recording agreement looks like. So just pardon the black lines. I had to black out some confidential information. So this is like what the first page of the recording agreement would look like. Here, this would have the date. And usually where it says between, it would have the company name. So it could say Warner Music Group, it could say Universal Music Group, Atlantic, whatever. And then the artist name. And if it's a band, it'll have the band name up here. And then it'll say PKA, and it'll list all of the band members after that. So this is the first page, and it just basically discusses that it's an exclusive service between the company and the artist, and then they'll go into the term, which is down here. So the term could be just an initial period, which is later on defined. An initial period could be 1 LP, it could be an EP, whatever the artist and business affairs was able to negotiate. And then you have something called option periods. So the term could be an initial period plus 4 option periods, which could be another 3, 4 LPs, EPs, etc. So basically, this is just clarifying what it said on the first page. An initial period they're saying is going to be LP1, the first option period, LP2, and so on. The next section that my department focuses on is the recording procedure, which this will basically kind of just summarize what they're expecting. Down here, it says that there's going to be 11 masters, and it's going to be a total of 40 minutes of music. Purchase recordings are another thing that can be negotiated. Not every artist that signs with the label will have previous recordings that they're coming into with. Let's say we find an artist from SoundCloud and we want to sign that artist and they've already released music on their own. The label can negotiate and buy those recordings that they've already released. And then in the agreement, it'll either say the purchase recordings are part of the recording agreement, part of the initial period, LP1, LP2, or they're not included in that term, but we're still purchasing them separately. This is another section that we focus on, and it's called Creative and Marketing Matters. And this section will discuss joint records, compilations, mid-price, and budget records. The mid-price and the budget is what I focus on specifically, as we need to input that into our royalty system. And I don't know if you guys have discussed that at all, but basically it's the mid-price is discussing when usually there's like a term of like 12 months, maybe 18 months of when the record can be discounted to sell. The same thing with the budget. So let's say an album releases tomorrow, and in this agreement, it says that we can adjust the price within 12 months. So in stores, it can be discounted. We have a section with advances. My department doesn't really focus on the advances and the recording costs so much as kind of like A&R administration in New York that we deal with. They focus on this section. When we create an account, there needs to be an account created for them to book the costs. And a lot of times the advances get booked first for obvious reasons. The producer services, usually in the recording contract, it's kind of just vague. We'll get separate agreements for each producer, especially if there's a different producer for each track. Again, my department doesn't deal with this section as much. Artist royalties will deal with that because they need to create separate accounts in their system under the artist account. So you have an artist account, which we call head office accounts, and then we have branch accounts, which would be for the producers and for all of the track costs. Now the royalty section is what my department cares most about, and we need to be able to have all of this information in order to set up an account correctly. A lot of times, business affairs will use a template agreement for each artist. So if you're not reading the whole agreement carefully, you can find mistakes that need to be clarified before we can go ahead and set up the agreement. I forgot to mention that anything that is capitalized or bolded and underlined, it will be defined in the definition section, which I will also show you later. So if you are reading and you don't know what something means, you just flip all the way to the end and there's a section that has everything defined. So for this one, they're showing EPs would get a different rate. Sometimes singles and EPs have the same rate. It kind of just depends what's negotiated. Here, they're also saying that the initial period and the first and second option period are all getting the same rate, while the third and fourth option periods are getting a different rate. Now you have escalations, which escalations, you can have a different rate if an album sells a certain number of units. It could be 100,000 units, it could be 400,000 units. It kind of just depends on what's negotiated. Usually we'll see like 400,000 units and then like maybe 1 million, 1.2 million units here. It kind of depends. And the escalation rates. So if, let's see, on the initial first and second option period, let's say they're getting 16% of the basic US rate. The escalation, it'll be 16.5% here and then 17% here. They usually increase by a half percentage, although I have seen some that have increased by a full 1%. It just depends on the agreement. Now we have different territories. So again, when you're reading the agreement, usually in the first section, it'll have territory and it'll say universe, which is the whole world. Again, you can also go to the definition and look for the territory. That depends on how we set things up in the system. So it could be an Australian artist, which would be getting a different rate than they would be getting in the United States. So usually down here where it says rest of world, in our system, we would put like world X, US, and Australia, just so we know that the computer can make that determination between the different rates. This, I'm not exactly sure how they come up with what territories are getting what. I assume it probably has to do with marketing and what countries the artist is performing better. I especially know if we get an Australian or a Canadian artist, usually that's listed on here. But sometimes it just seems very, very random, and I personally don't know how they come up with this. Next, the royalty section continued. We input the club rate, we input the TV campaign language. We don't really do that here in the United States, but in other countries like Europe, Australia, they run TV commercials for either the artist's tour or the artist's album. For instance, like I'm trying to think of one that I can use, like Michael Bublé. I've seen a Michael Bublé commercial on TV before. So in this section where it says the TV campaign, that's the section that we need to look at. And then we have a TV campaign section in our online royalty system, which I unfortunately can't show. Is kind of a bummer, but a lot of it is confidential information. Down here, we get into club records and streaming language. Oh, sorry. Let me go to. So this is what the whole page of the recording and the recording agreement will look like. And I kind of just want you to see how lengthy it is. See how this is bold and underlined? That is a definition that we can see later on. This is actually a shorter agreement. It's only 38 pages. I've had to read agreements that are 50 pages, 100 pages. Sometimes they get pretty confusing, but this section is the main section that I typically have to look for. And if it's not included in that section, I have seen it included in other sections. So you really do have to read the whole agreement. I want to get to the bottom. So this agreement that I have is actually an artist that is under the age of 18. So there's a special clause in here for a minor, which is sometimes interesting to read. Let's see here. So it's the guardian's guarantee. The parent or guardian has to sign the agreement in addition to the artist. And it's basically the parent or guardian stating that they understand everything, and then they sign it as well. I've actually seen some agreements that have a tutoring section if the artist is underage. Sometimes they'll write into the agreement that they will travel with a tutor or do online school, whatever the agreement is that they decide. This is the definitions, which is very helpful even for me, because depending on the business affairs executive that wrote the agreement, they can have different definitions. Most of the time it can be pretty straightforward, but you never know. This corner here that I blacked out is the initials of the person who wrote the agreement. So if you do have any problems, that would be the person that I would go to for questions, because sometimes it's not clear. But a lot of these, like, you could find in textbooks. Like, this is just basically explaining what a budget record is. Let me scroll down so you can see the territory. So this is, it says territory of the universe, but sometimes it could say the United States and Australia, or United States and Canada, or it could say European Union. And sometimes we might not know what that means. If European Union's not defined in this agreement, we could go on Google and look up what is included in that, but that's not always super accurate. So a lot of times we'll just have to email business affairs and see if they can clarify anything. Let me see if there's some questions. You worked in both the licensing and marketing departments in the music industry, doing general licensing at BMI and the marketing and sales coordinator at Blink Marketing. Can you compare and contrast these fields? And from your experience in these fields, what do you think are the best qualities for an individual to have to thrive? So actually, Blink Marketing wasn't in the music industry. It was in the promotional products industry, which I enjoyed a lot. Basically, if you're going to, let's say, a concert or a sporting event or anything where you get like a freebie, whether it be a pen, shirt, a backpack with a logo on it, that was something that my company would do. We produced promotional products, but while I worked there, I also ran their social media pages and separate marketing campaigns, Google AdWords and that sort of thing. And at the time, I thought I would want to do that, but just in music. I haven't had an opportunity to do that yet, so I can't really speak on whether or not I would still be interested in doing that for music. But right now, I do like where I am in royalties. The general licensing aspect of BMI was great, but also I learned that that wasn't for me. Since I've worked in licensing, publishing, and now royalties, I can definitely say that I liked the publishing and the artist royalties aspect more. Let's see, what else? How did working at BMI differ from working at the Country Music Hall of Fame? Was one experience better than the other, or were they incomparable? They were two very different environments. One, BMI was more corporate, and the Country Music Hall of Fame was very relaxed. And as an intern, I kind of got to work on a bunch of different projects that I probably wouldn't have been able to do if I was employed there. I worked on two separate departments, the development and fundraising department, and then the marketing, digital marketing web stuff. So it's kind of hard to compare just because they're so different, but that's why I like internships, because you can get different experience in different industries just to see what you like, what you want to pursue, and what you don't like at all. Let's see. Is the artist involved in making these types of decisions, or is everything decided on their behalf? I'm honestly not sure. I would assume the artist would be in these meetings as the agreement is being drafted, but obviously they have a lawyer that is representing them as well. So the lawyer that they have isn't going to make a decision that isn't in the artist's favor. During the negotiation periods of the agreement, if there are any large discussions that would make you go back and completely redo a section of the agreement. I've never been in a negotiation, but I do know that there are sometimes what we call amendments that come in. So we'll get the original agreement, and then oftentimes a day or two later, a week, sometimes even a year, we could get an amendment, which would basically be altering a section of the previous agreement that we have. And that amendment will say, it'll reference in bold and underlined the date of the previous agreement that we have. Let's see. What happens if an artist undersells what they initially expected? Honestly, I'm not sure, as basically anything that happens after my department, I don't handle anything with sales. I don't handle anything with streaming numbers or album counts, anything like that. Our sole purpose is to make sure that the rates are going to calculate in the system when the artist releases music. It moves on to the artist royalties team, and that person that has that account is in charge of linking all of the tracks to the account that we have in our system. Let's see. Was there a penalty imposed or a fee the owners had to pay if their license wasn't renewed or expired? I'm assuming that question is in relation to BMI, and yes, a lot of times the owners of bars and restaurants, they know that they have to pay a license and they don't want to pay it because it's expensive. But what they also don't know is that there are people whose jobs it is to go into these businesses and sit there and record the music usage. And if a certain percentage of the music that's being played is a BMI artist, is BMI in the BMI catalog, then they can get fined for each song that they play. Sometimes you'll see stories in the newspaper of a bar or a restaurant being fined in like six figures for something like this. Let's see. Based on your internship experience, what would you say you have learned that you use and experience every day in your work life and have applied to your personal life? Let's see. Well, my internships at the Country Music Hall of Fame kind of required me to be more outgoing than I was going into it. I had to interact and talk with a lot of high-level executives, and that was my first time doing so. So it kind of brought me out of my shell a little bit. And now I remember that experience and I use it at networking events. It did take me longer than it probably should have to go to networking events, but now I know how important they are. So that is something I highly recommend. You can even go to networking events while you're a student. You don't have to be in the workforce to do that. And you never know who you're going to meet there. So go prepared with business cards. But also I've learned I would never flat out ask for a job from these events, but you can ask like, oh, do you want to meet for coffee? I'd love to hear more about what you do. And that always seems to go over pretty well. Let's see. Important adult life question. Does the company you work for offer insurance and benefits, or do you have to purchase it yourself? I know in most corporate industries they do, however, I don't know about the music industry. So that's a good question. With my company, Warner Music Group, and at Universal, they did have health insurance. And they do pay for it. A small portion comes out of my paychecks. But if you are a musician or a songwriter and you don't work for a company like this, you will have to purchase your own health insurance, which is why I'm involved in an organization called Music Cares, which is an organization that basically provides aid for anybody in the music industry that's in a financial crisis. So a lot of times, self-employed musicians, songwriters, touring people can get insurance through them, through the Music Health Alliance, or they can get some sort of stipend. Have you met any country artists while working at the Country Music Hall of Fame? I didn't officially meet anybody, but I did get to ride an elevator with Kenny Rogers once, and that was pretty cool. Let's see. Given that you had a few other jobs, what experiences do you think helped you the most to get you where you are? I think that because I've had a few other jobs, it's helped me just get the job that I have. A lot of people in my office are actually fresh out of college, but my boss was looking for somebody that had a little bit more experience. I didn't necessarily have experience reading contracts, but that's something that they can teach. So as long as I feel like you're willing to work and put in the time and effort, that kind of goes a long way. Let's see. People tend to think that you have to enjoy country music to thrive in Nashville. What are your thoughts? Yes, country music is pretty much everywhere in Nashville, but that's not the only music scene that's here. We have a lot of like pop punk bands. We have a lot of indie. We have a lot of Americana. There's a lot of different venues for different genres. So you don't just have to enjoy country music to live in Nashville. What is your favorite memory from your time as a student at Albright? So when I was a student at Albright, the music industry studies wasn't a major, it was only a minor, and we didn't have really any resources that you guys have today. So this is pretty cool that you have a forum to learn and ask questions. But I would have to say that my favorite memory is I went on 2 alternative spring break trips, and those were pretty fun. What was your favorite task you got to partake in during your time at the Hall of Fame? So one of my favorite things was helping to plan the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, which they call the medallion ceremony. And I actually got to attend that, and I think Kenny Rogers was being inducted when I was there. So that was just cool to watch, and probably a once in a lifetime opportunity because you can't buy tickets to an event like that. Would you say that Albright really helped prepare you for your career? I would say yes, because I had such a wide variety of interests. And since I did double major in marketing and business administration and minored in music business, it's kind of just a broad knowledge that I took with me to different areas of my work. How did you find out about networking events while you were still a student? LinkedIn. I was on LinkedIn in high school. I am on LinkedIn every day now, even though I'm not currently looking for a job. There are a lot of different groups that you can join based on your interest. There's marketing groups, there's a lot of music groups, and people in there are always posting about different events, or they have different websites that you can go to just to brush up on certain skills. I actually just did like a free online class last week because I'm home working from home and I needed something to do, and this kind of brushed me up on more of the music law and ethics side of things that hopefully will help me out in my day-to-day job. But networking outside of my job in Nashville, at least, we have a lot of networking groups. I'm in the Women's Music Business Association, and that is a group every month. All of the women that work in music in Nashville come together and meet, and there'll usually be a speaker, and you can learn about that person and what they do in the industry, and you can ask questions there. And I've met a lot of great people there. There's Women in Music in Nashville. We have Solid. We have a lot of different organizations that you can meet a lot of people at in Nashville. And even just by going to concerts and events in town, as Brianna mentioned, you can meet a lot of people that way. I've gone to a lot of shows. A lot of shows are free. I've gone to a lot, and once you keep going, you see the same people at each show. How would you stay updated with all of the new changes that occur within marketing or any other department within the business? So marketing wise, I'm kind of an early adopter with certain technologies. Like I was on Twitter before it was big. I was using it in high school when nobody was really on it. And that's something that people use every day. I kind of also always plugged in, which is both good and bad. So marketing wise, just kind of always be looking out for the next platform and play around with it. With my marketing job, like if you're asked to do something and you don't know how to do it, I always just said yes. And then I would Google it or go on YouTube and learn how to do it because I wanted them to know that I could do whatever was asked of me. As for any other department within, it said we're going to answer it live. Okay. How has living in Nashville impacted your opportunities within the music industry? So obviously Nashville is a big music town. We have two colleges that have huge music programs, MTSU and Belmont. A lot of my office in Nashville has a lot of Belmont, like a lot of students right from Belmont that have just graduated. But I think I was able to get my job because I didn't go to Belmont and I had a different background, different experience than a lot of the Belmont students. What would you say is the most difficult part when dealing with these different contracts? A lot of times the business affairs executives that write these agreements don't know how they'll be set up in our system. They don't know what our system can handle. So sometimes we'll be reading something and trying to set something up and it's just not possible. So we'll have to go back and forth with business affairs to see what can be changed or just kind of to clarify how it should be set up. The system is old and they actually are looking to have a new system that hopefully will be more up to date. So hopefully that happens, but until then we have to manually input everything. If you could branch into other areas of the music industry, what would you pursue? Well, I always thought that I wanted to work at BMI, and I did work there and it wasn't for me. But that's not to say that all of BMI isn't for me. It's just I didn't enjoy the call center aspect that I was in. I think I would like to eventually work more directly with songwriters as maybe like a song plugger. But again, I don't have experience in that area. But for me, that would be fun because part of living in Nashville, I go to a lot of writers' rounds and I get to see these songwriters perform their songs. And then like 4 years later, I hear it on the radio, sung by Florida Georgia Line or whoever. But that area is cool to me. Where do you see yourself in 3 years? That's always a question that makes me laugh in job interviews because I moved to Nashville for a temporary internship and here I am almost 7 years later, still here. So I don't know. I would like to stay at Warner for a long time. I've never stayed at a job longer than 2 years. So I would like to have some tenure at Warner, whether it's in my department or not. When you said that the royalty rate negotiated for the artist under the different album tier rates are 16.5% of the US rate, does that mean the artist would only get 16.5% of the 9.1 cents per song sold? That's a good question, and I think it depends. I don't really know if I'm the best person to answer that, but I can try and get some more information before the panel. I'll come back to you on that. And what advice would you give for the first week on the job? Read literally every manual they give you. My first week at Warner, my boss actually wasn't there and I was alone and I basically just read every manual that they gave me for every system. I read every book that they gave me. And so when they came back, I was prepared and able to have a list of questions and ask them when I didn't understand and kind of just jump right into work. Okay, I think that was the last question.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Jenna. Round of applause digitally for Jenna, everybody. We're going to take a quick break. We'll get Paul Sinclair on the line and I'll rejoin you at around 2 o'clock. Thanks, Jenna. Hey there, Paul.
Hello, friend. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm good.
Are you
Yeah.
ready to get rolling? I could introduce you and we can start a little bit early if you'd like that.
Now let me make sure the presentation works and close all these things I've opened. Um, Actually, I won't bring the presentation over up on my other computer because you never know.
Perfect.
Let me just make sure it works on here.
Hey there, Paul.
Hello, friend. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Hold on, let me kill that. All right, that was a
Like
good test.
Inception.
So we killed the YouTube stream. Good test. All right, let me see. Let me bring up the presentation. How's it been going? Good?
It's perfect. You're live with all my students right now.
Oh, great.
Broadcast to the world. Say hi, everybody. Digitally.
Yep.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, gang. Let me, let's see. Keynote. Let's see if this works. Hold on, I have to change my system's preferences here. It's not an option. There we go. Quit. I think I have to leave and come back in.
That's fine. I'm going to do a little commercial for everybody anyway. So join
All right.
back whenever you're ready. And anyone that's watching at home, we do have a portal for everyone to donate. Your support is really necessary to make the music department and music industry studies program at Albright College thrive as it has for the last 4, 5, 10 years. So if you could please visit albright.edu/give now. And in the comments, enter music department. Your donations go direct to student support. That's with their technology, their business courses, and all of the things that they need to be successful within this industry. So that's my little plug for the day. Please visit albright.edu/give now. And in the comments, please plug in music department. Every donation helps all the students at Albright College, specifically the music industry studies students.
All right, I'm back.
You ready?
Maybe let's try share screen to make sure we're good.
Let's do it.
Host disabled attendee screen sharing.
I'll get you.
All right.
You're ready to go.
All right. Let's see here. Lizzo. Go on the present mode. Can you see Lizzo?
I see Lizzo. We're ready to go. I'll give you a quick introduction and we'll get going.
Go back up. Cool.
So, hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is Paul Sinclair. He's the general manager at Atlantic Records. As the GM of Atlantic Records, Paul oversees the innovation and integration of marketing, digital, artist development, creative, and content for the #1 record label in the world. During his time as head of digital at Atlantic, he created the first fully realized in-house interactive agency within a major record label. The almost 50-person team is staffed with digital/social marketers, interactive designers, animators, and web developers, product development specialists, lifestyle and influencer marketers, content and editorial managers, and e-commerce marketers and merchandisers. Atlantic Records has been recognized as the #1 label by market share 6 times from 2006 to 2015, and was the first major label to derive more than 50% of its revenue from digital sources. Please help me welcome Paul Sinclair.
Thanks, AJ. Wow, that was quite a bio. Okay, so hi everyone. Thanks for having me. Wish I could see you in person. Hopefully next year I can see you all in person. Welcome to my home office. I've been working here for 24 days now. It's a bedroom. It's been phenomenal, and I love leaving this room sometimes. So I actually wanted to talk to you about 2 things. So when Professor Merlino and I were talking about this, I said, I have a couple of ideas. We kicked it around, and I said, let's focus on Lizzo. He said, I think that'd be great. And so I'm going to take you through a case study of Lizzo and why I think that project is both incredibly unique as well as incredibly representative of the last few years in the music industry and what it means to break a major label artist in the music industry and all the things that we've learned along the way. It's been a fascinating experience, and I'm super passionate about Lizzo, as I hope lots of people are. So I'll take you through that. And then I cut that presentation down to about 25 or 30 minutes because I also wanted to do a quick 15 minutes on, wow, what a crazy world we're living in. What does this all mean for the next 2 years or so as you all learn and think about where you're going to go with your careers, and whether it's within recorded music or publishing or other parts of the industry, performance or whatever. So I've been thinking a lot about what this is going to mean for Atlantic Records for the future, and I thought I would share some of that with you as well. So I will try to keep us on time. I'm going to start a timer, which I meant to start and I missed. So bear with me for 5 seconds so that I keep myself on time here. Ready, go. Okay. Okay. And so I allowed time for questions at the end as well. And I know they're somewhere in this thing. Once I go out of full screen mode, we'll be able to find the questions. Okay. So first and foremost, I don't want to spend much time here, but hi. As AJ said, my name is Paul Sinclair. I'm class of 97. Which both feels like yesterday for me as well as 100,000 years ago. I went to Albright and majored in business administration. I concentrated in first finance and then management. There was no music program, obviously, or no music business program. I've been involved with the program since it started, on and off, right? So I met AJ, I think maybe 4 or 5 years ago, but I've been in and out of the program. I've joined a few of these over the years. I think the last time I joined in person was maybe 5 years ago or 6 years ago. I think I met Brianna there actually, and she and I have now we're coworkers, but we have known each other over the years. And I think then I presented something like music and technology, and sort of both the history of music and technology, and then where I thought it might go, and tried to pull some lessons from that. So instead of doing that again, I wanted to talk to you about my dear friend Lizzo. So that's my background. I did not start in music. I graduated from Albright. I worked in software for a few years. I worked in startups for 2 years. And then I was lucky enough to find myself